If you can't hear me, raise your hand. How would you do that? Well, welcome, folks. My name is Brewster Rhodes. I have the honor of being the chair of the board of the Ohio Riverway. And this organization was launched in partnership with my good friend, Dr. David Wicks, who represents River City Paddle Sports. David, raise your hand over here. Everybody knows Mr. Voyager Canoe. And we started, doing a 33-hour, 130-mile over straight through paddle from Cincinnati to Louisville. We only stopped to take a leak and had a wonderful time in the middle of the night thinking about what could be done if we could get people who love the river like us together to collaborate around promoting, marketing, telling the truth about the Ohio for recreation, for tourism, for community and economic development. And at 2 in the morning, when there's nobody around, as you're paddling with the moon, no ambient light, it's easy to start thinking, wouldn't it be cool if? And so we thought, let's see if we can get people together, share experiences, connect communities, and think about what we could build by people collaborating with each other from Portsmouth, Ironton as well, down to at least West Point. Mayor, there we are over here, Mayor of West Point. And actually we have people from further downriver in Perry County and further upriver, all the way to Gallipolis and Marietta, who want to get connected to what we're doing. So we know we're doing something right by getting people who share a common love of, passion for, and appreciation of this incredible natural resource we have here at the Ohio River. So we have a lot to do today, and hopefully all of you will leave meeting a whole bunch of new people. Everybody bring business cards to share. I hope you did, because the whole idea here is you meet new folks and establish new relationships, sort of like ambassadors connecting with each other from country to country, but from community to community, county to county. And so hopefully you'll walk out with a bunch of new relationships in your pocket, right? So please make sure you introduce yourself. Feel free to have conversations. I think that's not going to be hard with this group. You're all into connecting with each other. We've seen that in the last 15, 20 hours since everybody arrived last night. So, good. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to first get a feel for who is in the room. So, we have about 160 people who've registered. Some were able to make it last minute. Some made it without registering in advance, which is just fine. So, we have 8 states represented today. Imagine that. We have, okay, here's the deal. 41 from Ohio registered. Let's hear it for Ohio. Okay. But Indiana beat us, and I'm from Cincinnati, so Indiana had 44 people who registered for this event. And as they should be, because they have the longest riverfront in this stretch, the state of Kentucky kicked all of our butts. And there are 62 people here who represent Kentucky. So that's off, David. All right. But by cities, we had some cities like wonderful towns had at least 3 people: Augusta, Aurora, Batavia, Carrollton, Maysville, each have at least 3. These folks have 4. Gallatin County, let's hear it for Gallatin County. All right, they're in the house. New Richmond and the city of Newport in northern Kentucky each had 4. Covington had 5. Lawrenceburg and Burlington tied at 8. So those Boone County people really coming through, and Lawrenceburg, thanks to the Archaeological Research Institute, hi Liz, are in the house big time. Indianapolis had 11 people registered for this event. Madison, Mayor, 12, and there's probably more. So we love it. Louisville did great with 18, at least 18 people representing communities in Louisville. Well, they're from Louisville, put it that way. But my hometown of Cincinnati rocked it with 25 people representing Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Okay, we're tied. Kentucky had more, but Cincinnati had more too. Okay, so that's all good. So I think we have 26 park and rec districts, conservancy districts, and watershed organizations. If you are one of them, raise your hand. Park districts, rec commissions, watershed organizations. And then, raise your hand too. Okay, there you go. Tourism. Who here is involved in the tourism profession? Sarah, thank you very much for your wonderful work here. Tourism, okay, raise your hand. I think we had 19 tourism professionals, and that includes some board members, which is wonderful, like happy. Yeah, with that. Okay, next we have 12 at least elected officials in the room. We'll introduce them in a quick second. We had 17 businesses registered, including some folks who are sponsors out there who have great products and services to sell and promote. So couldn't be cooler to have all these people in the room from different constituencies and up and down the river. And I'd like every elected official to please stand. All of our elected officials. Mayor. Good, folks. I want to introduce Mary. Come on up, Mary. Once again, Mary Allen is on our board, executive committee, and an elected official in beautiful New Richmond, Ohio. And we're going to co-facilitate this program. So, Mary, take it away.
I'm not going to tell you things you already know. So next, we're going to ask David Wicks, who's one of our co-founders, to come up and talk about our accomplishments for this last year. David?
Oh, that was fast. What a pleasure, you know. My name is David Wicks, and I'm really here to highlight our recreation initiatives, and let me see if, nope. Why don't you just flip it? Well, get our technology. It's really thanks to our partners. We've grown from an all-volunteer group to include now 2 experienced workers from the National Park Service, communication, who you've met, a manager, Forrest, over here, and our new executive director, Mark Knoll, housed at the University of Louisville's Envirome Institute. Our power really lies in partnerships. We boast over 100 partners. Next slide. We boast over 100 partners dedicated to promoting outdoor recreation along the Ohio Riverway. Next slide. Our success is reflected in thriving river towns. Highlighted some of the projects. Portsmouth, Ohio just received $1.5 million for new boat docks and transitory docks. Vanceburg is planning a new marina. Maysville just got $1.2 million for marina refurbishment and a campground refurbishment. Ripley is planning a $2 million riverfront plan. Activity thrives in our middle section. You know, New Richmond, just who you heard from Mary, has just received significant funds for a road reconstruction and reconfiguration, as well as a bike trail. Cincinnati is getting a $4 million marina, and they're contracting it right now. Next slide. You know, Boone County is really thinking through this whole process of land conservation along the shoreline, over a mile of it. Madison is considering the development of a new riverfront tent camping. Louisville is looking to build a new Ohio River Interpretive Center in Shawnee Park in the middle of our West Point, and certainly West End, and certainly West Point is redeveloping and looking to build a boat ramp and a new access point, as long as we can figure out how to get the core to move a little faster. Next slide. Our community spirit shines through our vibrant river events. These are all viewable on the website, and please certainly keep us in track with those. Next slide. You know, we are we're very interested. Let me see here, right here. You know, we're very interested in sort of using all this momentum to create this National Water Trail, and we're pleased to have the National Park Service here and staff today, and you're going to hear much more about that. You know, we've published the Ohio River Guide, almost 50,000 copies, and just to let you know, we have boxes of them, and we hope people take some of those boxes back with you to share with your local residents. The digital guide, we certainly want to give a shout out to OKI, and if you haven't been on the digital guide, it's just really an amazing piece. This afternoon we're going to be spending time looking at all of the different unique aspects of each river town, and hopefully they'll be on the digital guide. You know, this Rivertown Review is really one of the ways that we've really started our work with a lot of the river towns. We've done 13 of them. We just want to give a shout out once again to John Olivier over there to really pulling together all of the 13 projects and creating the summary. And then working with Russ Clark over there, sort of to take through, okay, we'll say Andrea as well, but to sort of think through what's next. And so they've created the Rivertown Review Toolkit, which you will learn more about this afternoon. But one of the neat things is that the Ohio River Valley is leading the way nationally. So this is being used nationally now, so it's just a neat project. You know, I want to give a shout out to the University of Kentucky. If there are other academics or other individuals who have the ability to help sponsor one of these Rivertown reviews, but UK School of Landscape Architecture last year worked with Carrollton. This year they're working with Milton and Trimble County across the way, using the Rivertown Review Toolkit as a basis. It's their capstone course for landscape architecture, and that's sort of one of the drawings of what, you know, they think it could be. One of my passions, if you haven't seen my boats over there, we have done 3 of these trips, and we plan on certainly doing a 4th one this year coming up. We encourage folks to come on. Those are the dates from last year, by the way, not this year. And one of the pieces that we really want to sort of think through is highlighting some of the river towns. We really want to work more with our hotels and bed and breakfasts in each one of those towns, as well as camping out. You know, I just want to give one final shout out to Melissa Burkhart. If you haven't met Melissa, back over there, but just a wonderful photographer, lives on the river right across the way in Milton. And her husband is one of our main sponsors today, so it's just a pleasure. But you know, with this slide, it's just perfect for me to introduce our next speaker, and that's really Mark Knoll. Mark comes from out west. He was a native Kentuckian, moved out west, and came back with the support of the U of L Envirome Institute. He's a Kentucky native, sort of Lexington area. He's a community planner and a lifelong advocate for really the Ohio River. And he's worked with public and private and not-for-profit partners to develop community initiatives focused on access and mobility, the environment, and economic development. So it really is a pleasure to introduce our first executive director, Mark Knoll.
Thank you, David, for that welcome. And good morning, everyone. Wow, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to see such a wonderful, diverse group gathered here today in Madison. For those of you who have not yet met, my name is Mark Knoll. I stepped into this role as executive director at the beginning of September. So very new, just getting my feet on the ground, but again, thrilled to be here. And with that, I'm so excited to meet every one of you, share ideas, explore partnership opportunities, and create with you new initiatives and programs that will help the Ohio Riverway advance our mission and create a stronger, healthier region. This truly is such an exciting time for the Ohio Riverway. And as David mentioned, we are extremely grateful for the new and strengthened partnerships that have developed this past year. First, the National Park Service is providing staff support to help us pursue National Water Trail designation and expand the reach of our Rivertown Review program. And we really hope that this is just the beginning of that partnership with the National Park Service. Second, we are thrilled for the support of the Owsley Brown II Family Foundation that is sponsoring our collaboration with the Christy Lee Brown Envirome Institute and the University of Louisville, and providing the Ohio Riverway access to a network of environmental and public health research professionals, and also opening opportunities for additional partnerships with universities up and down the Ohio River. And later today, we will be joined by Dr. Ted Smith, the director of the Center for Healthy Air, Water, and Soil at the Envirome Institute, to learn a little bit more about that collaboration with the Envirome. All right, folks, we do have a full day in front of us. I just want to do a brief rundown of our agenda. This morning we have lined up two fantastic panels. One made up of regional trail and community engagement experts that can share their experiences building regional trails. And that will be followed by a panel of federal partners who will share how we can better locate and take advantage of federal resources. We will also hear from Jordan Lubetkin. Jordan, where are you? All right. Jordan was with the National Wildlife Federation, and we will learn more about the status of the Ohio River Basin Restoration Plan, which truly has the opportunity to be a game changer for our region. Following lunch, we will hear from our keynote speaker, Stephan Nofield, who as of yesterday is the Deputy Associate Director of the National Park Service, and so we are thrilled to have him join us today. This afternoon will be all about co-creating the future direction of the Ohio Riverway. We will have two breakout sessions that will give us an opportunity to come together in smaller groups, learn from each other, and generate new ideas that will help inform many of the Ohio Riverway's future initiatives. Okay, before we move forward, I want to introduce Mayor Bob Courtney. Mayor Courtney is a Madison native and took office in October of 2019, becoming Madison's 37th mayor. And as Mayor Courtney steps forward, I just want to take a moment to gush on Madison a little bit. I absolutely love this small town. Every time I come here, I find something new. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, if you haven't been here before, I highly recommend stepping outside of the hotel, take a stroll down Main Street, take a walk down to the riverfront, because it truly is a model for what other river communities can become up and down the Ohio. So with that, Mayor Courtney.
Mark, thank you so much. Just a little story. As Mark's saying, I grew up here in Madison, Indiana, just a few blocks from here. Those who know me know that I talk a lot about my early life here in Madison, because I grew up on Walnut Street. And the cool thing about Walnut Street is it's a north and south street, so it runs to the river. And all of us kids, everything we did was downtown, and it generally involved us coming down to the river at some point in time during the day, whether it was to the pool or to camp or canoe or to go to the boys club. So many to play basketball at the gym. So this river that we have here literally defines, in my opinion, the spirit of Madison. And there's nothing better, and I just live right down the street still, there's nothing better than getting up on a cool fall morning with a little fog in the air and going for a run down our riverfront and just seeing, the fog around the bridge. And Melissa, the photos you took before, and one I think is one of your photos up here, and I think I saw some this morning on Facebook, really captures just the beauty of our town. And I know there's so many beautiful river towns up and down the Ohio River. Mark, you're saying you gush when you saw Madison yesterday. I've been here. I get to do that every day. The people that live here love this town because for the last 30 to 40 years, it keeps transforming. It keeps reinventing itself. The place you're here today, and I want to thank our hosts here at the Fairfield, this place has reinvented itself dramatically. And as it reinvented itself and transformed itself from a cotton mill, half a century or a century ago, to becoming a dilapidated building that was just sitting there, wanting somebody to love it and re-energize it, and it did. Starting in 2019, and we finished the construction in late 2021, I believe. It's a public-private partnerships. It's these partnerships you were talking about earlier that really generate the collaborations, the energy, the excitement, the planning, the vision. All of that is exactly what we're doing here on our riverfront. And I'm not exactly sure where Andrew took you on the tour yesterday. It sounds like he had a great visit here in Madison. But our riverfront, from the east end to the west end, is full of so many things to do and so many experiences and so much investment. From the new bridge, that was an engineering marvel for about a decade or so ago, to the new gateway, that now is connecting everybody from the bridge over there down to our riverfront. Our parks development. We're making improvements to our amphitheater, our outdoor amphitheater, because music comes alive. And the stories that are told with music on the river is phenomenal. A new aquatic center is being built down here. It's a reconstruction of a WPA project from 1938. Keep going, and we entered into an agreement with American Queen Voyages, to improve a docking system so that the thousands of guests that they bring to Madison can get on and off the boat safely and have a fantastic experience to get here. But the other cool thing about it is, as you go west on the road, it's the trailhead for the American Discovery Trail. And then that takes you all around Jefferson County. So the river plays such a tremendous role in the lives that we have here in Madison. But the thing that it really, really does, Brewster, is that it creates a quality of life that we all want. So, Brewster, I want to say your remarks earlier were spot on, and your enthusiasm is unbelievable. I think you and I might share that. I'll tell you a quick story. A few months ago, I was speaking in front of a group. I was with my wife, and she said, remember, nobody likes long speeches. So keep it brief. So I get up there, but I'm excited to be there. And I'm also excited always to talk about my town, Madison. And so I kept it brief. It was under 2 minutes. Unfortunately, you guys are getting the extended version today. It was under 2 minutes, and I was excited to get back to where my wife was sitting. I said, how did I do? And she said, you're too enthusiastic. I'm like, how can someone be too enthusiastic, particularly when you're talking about something you love? And Brewster, you bring that same enthusiasm. When he and I met a few years ago, he immediately was a spark. He's the spark plug that is the engine that's driving a lot of change and love for our river. But we're continuing to make so much investments and converting our riverfront from something that 30 to 35 years ago was mostly industrial to now destination development. It's the tourism driver for us. It's the quality of life. It's what's bringing people here and growing our population as well, assisting in that regard. So we're super excited about all of the investment that we've been making. And a lot of what you see as you get a chance to walk along our river and the boardwalk out there, a lot of that was done with private money. We have a group here in Madison who's dedicated. Their one job, their one mission is to improve our riverfront. In fact, they're called the Riverfront Development Committee. And these are guys, a group of men and women who are very enthusiastic about the Ohio River. They love the boat, they love boating, they love everything about our river. And so they have raised probably $30-40 million over that span period. And then now we are partnering with them continuously for a lot of new investment. I also love the theme that you have here, which is turning ripples into waves. And I think that's phenomenal. Well, let me leave you with this, and that is just a quote from one of our probably most well-known, I call him a river rat to a certain extent because he loved the river, and that was Harlan Hubbard, who was an American artist. In fact, the bridge here, the pedway that comes across the bridge and links us to our riverfront, is named after him and his wife. And what he did for our community, certainly about river life, was just elevate, the charm of river towns. But here's what he said. He said, the river extends this power of drawing all things with it, even to the imagination of those who live on its banks. Who could long watch the ceaseless lapsing of a river's current without conceiving a desire to set himself adrift? And like the driftwood which glides past, float with the stream, clear to the final ocean. And I think it's a powerful, symbolism about what the rivers mean to all of our communities. And it certainly does to Madison. And the last thing I'll say about the Ohio River is it connects us all, state to state. But if you were on our riverfront, it's going to connect you to our cultural arts district, our historic district, our vibrant, one-of-a-kind Main Street. And most importantly, it's going to connect you to all the people that love Madison and love our river and share with you the vision of doing so many things with it. I did mention, I forgot to mention, but down on the east end too, we have our own campground, and it is beautiful. If anybody's going to be here Saturday, you can go trick-or-treating at the campground. The campers love that. We're also exploring how do we bring primitive or tent camping to that area down there, because we do have space. We know that would be something that the river community and for tourism and those that love to be outdoors would also enjoy too. So it's great to see everybody here today, get around town a little bit more, and we're just thrilled to host you guys here today. Our tourism partners who are here, you all do a fantastic job. Elaine, thank you for being here too. Appreciate it, everybody, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
I've learned that when you're an elected official, I think we all have a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about our communities. So I do understand. This is a great opportunity, though, for us to acknowledge our sponsors. So we have North American Stainless, we have Duke, I don't want to forget anybody, RTCA, and the National Park Service. So Stacy Burkhart from North American Stainless, would you like to come up and say a few things? There he is.
Buddy.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Moses Chen. I am a project manager with the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, or RTCA for short. I just wanted to say thank you to Madison for having us here. We're really excited to be here. And I think we have about 40 minutes or so. Okay. We have an exciting panel here for you to discuss how do trails and our open spaces, recreational opportunities interplay with these communities. And I'm going to go ahead and invite our panelists up. If I can have the panelists join me up here on the stage.
Come on up. Slow on down.
Thank you. So we have a panel of some amazing practitioners of this work. And I, as your facilitator, will have prepared a couple questions that might help us to get started. But I also want to ask that you prepare your own questions, and we'll have a little bit of a session at the end to interact with our panelists here. I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do. And I will start here with Joe.
Thank you, Moses. My name is Joseph Solomon. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I think I drank too much coffee this morning. So my connection to the Ohio Riverway is I paddle. I paddle a lot. I paddle the entire Ohio River, the entire Mississippi River from Cincinnati to the Gulf, and the entire Swanee River from source to sea. And so what I'm doing on this panel here is a different perspective. I'm the recreationist that's out on the rivers. And I recently also started a nonprofit in Cincinnati. I'm trying to get a hold of a Voyager canoe so that I can help the Ohio Riverway connect all the communities along the corridor that they have. And so it's real fresh to me. I'm new to it, so if anybody wants to talk to me about how to run a nonprofit, how to get funds to pay for the nonprofit, I'd really be interested in talking to you about that. Yeah, that's about all I got.
Thank you. Next we have Russ Clark.
Good morning, I'm Russ Clark, I'm a landscape architect with the National Park Service RTCA program. We provide free technical planning assistance to communities to help create trail systems. So my work is outside of the parks and in communities. I'm based out of Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. Kentucky is my region that I work primarily in. I began on this project in 2019 when a couple of gentlemen asked me if there would be a possibility of creating a water trail on the Ohio River. And I said, first we need to determine if there's interest in creating that type of a water trail, especially for 274 miles. So we went through that effort in 2019 and 2020. They submitted an application to our program and was successful. And we started with brainstorming what could we do to help 34 river towns along this corridor enhance outdoor recreation. And that became a long journey. It was a project far bigger than I could take on, so I enlisted Andrea from Ohio as my counterpart for RTCA in Ohio, and together we worked with the 3 retired guys and their vision to create what you see today. This is a phenomenal success story. It's a successful project starting with an idea that has engaged multiple communities and involves several staff within the RTCA program to get here, and that's what we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Lizzie Gardner.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie Gardner. I am actually a Louisville native, so I grew up around the Ohio River. I currently live in Knoxville, Tennessee, really for a sister organization called the Tennessee River Line. We are an initiative of the University of Tennessee for a 652-mile water trail that runs from Knoxville, Tennessee to Paducah, Kentucky. And I work primarily with our communities through our River Towns program and helping communities realize their local stretch and vision of the river, and working with our planning and design team to help them actually implement, conceptually design, and plan pieces of the river. So doing a lot of the same work that the Ohio Riverway is doing. So excited to be here today.
Thank you, Lizzie. And last but not least, we have Dan Foley.
Thank you. Dan Foley, I'm the director of the Great Miami Riverway. I'm housed in Dayton, Ohio. And I was really glad to see all the elected officials here today. It's an important thing, I think, that every community tries the best they can to get elected officials in the room. That's how I came to be the director of the program that I do. I was a Montgomery County Commissioner in Dayton, Ohio. And one of the things, when you start looking about what are the different ways your community can grow economically, there's, obviously there's manufacturing, there's the transportation economy on the river, but there's also the fact that I think that river towns, and the mayor did a great job. I went for a run this morning at about 7 o'clock, and it's just such a beautiful town, and it makes you think that the opportunity to kind of add investment, whether it's public investment, private investment in our river communities, is significant. It's quality of life, but it's significant. I work with 20 partners, 11 cities on the Great Miami River. I'm housed at the Miami Conservancy District, which is a flood control agency in downtown Dayton. But really our job, we're all doing very similar things, and it's trying to attract investment from communities in the private sector to really grow what we know is a great asset.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to start with establishing what are we thinking about when we talk about trails? If you close your eyes and you think about a trail, and many of you may imagine a walking path that you may have been on. But for the purpose of this conversation, I also want to expand that to include our water trails as a form, and to think about it in its simplest form as a mode of getting from one place to another. And what does that path look like? Whether that includes just a dirt path to being on open water, to think about that connection. And also to think about our communities as more than just our organized towns or counties, but that there's a scale to this as well, whether it be with yourself and just your neighbor, or all the way up to the national, international scale as well, to think about communities on a larger level as well. But my first question to our panelists here is about how trails contribute to the identity of your communities. What have you seen in your experience? What's important to consider as we develop these kinds of connections?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that where I live in Dayton, in our trail system in the Miami Valley, that is getting closer to connect to Cincinnati and this whole area, by the way, which is why this matters, is that we have 350 miles of paved connected trail, and it started 50 years ago when a woman in Troy, Ohio, called the city of Troy. She was with the Hobart family, the big company in Troy, and she said, there's a flood control system on the Miami River, and there's a flat part. Can I put a bike trail up there? And 50 years later, we have 350 miles of connected paved trail. Becky is here from Great Parks in Hamilton County. So 50 years later, we built 350 miles, and the question is, what's going to happen in the next 50 years? And I would say to you, when you say, how do communities identify? We do all this kind of stuff. It says, my other car is a bicycle, right? So I've got a few of these. And then, we put, this is the kind of stuff that I know that the Ohio Riverway is going to continue to push for the same thing. At the end of the day, it's really about people. And then, as if somebody who spent a lot of time in public life, I just want to say, we live in a polarized country, but I think there's great support, whatever your stripe is, for this kind of investment in communities, and it makes me feel good.
I think when you start to look at trails and how they contribute to identity, you can almost look at them as a human, right? They can develop a personality, but it's the people around the trail or around the resource that really make that. And I think, one of the most obvious examples of that is the Appalachian Trail, right? It's a series of very small communities that live along it, but they really thrive because of that trail. On a smaller scale and based around water, I live very close to the Nantahala River, which runs through Bryson City. And because of that river and because of the programming and the investment that's come around that river, Bryson City is a place that is booming and people want to go to. And so I think that you have to look in a holistic way in how you're starting to develop infrastructure so that it can meet the needs of what you want your community to be built around. But I think if your trail starts to develop an identity of its own, a personality of its own, you're doing something right.
I think there is a great example right here on the Ohio River where a trail creates identity between two communities. When you look at Aurora and Lawrenceburg, with that great trail, off-road trail system, multi-use, that creates an identity for those two communities. They work together to promote the shared bike program, etc. And it's a very successful effort, and that attributes to a quality of life factor for those communities.
Me personally, I guess for connecting communities along the river, as a recreationist, I meet people all along the river. The song "Proud Mary" says that a line in that song is, "People along the river are willing to give," and that could not be any more true. I highlight when I do paddle rivers like the Ohio, river angels. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a river angel, but they are folks that live in the communities along the river that'll come out and help you with a hot shower, place to sleep for the night, a hot meal, and it's all about creating community along the river. So I as a paddler have been doing this for about 4 years now, connecting people all along the river. There's actually some river angels in this room right now as well that have taken care of me as I travel down the river. And community is a huge thing. I was a volunteer for AmeriCorps for 3 years and embedded myself into Lower Price Hill of Cincinnati, which is a very impoverished community. And I learned a lot about how to organize community while I was in that community. And my paddling, I do it to raise awareness for mental health in America, because there's not enough people talking about it. And I'm just getting people engaged in talking about mental health. And so yeah, I think that connecting all these small river towns is really a great project that Ohio Riverway is putting on. And they're a great resource for anybody that does want a recreation along the river.
Thanks, folks. Yeah, I'm really appreciating there's a common theme of how these trails and places, as much as we put into them, they shape us as well. I'm also noticing that it takes a great deal of investment and intention to design these places, and I want to extend my appreciation to you guys who do a lot of that hard work. Now, part of that investment and intention is on how that contributes to the livability of the communities that these trails pass through. Could you tell us a little bit about how you see that contributing to a local economy and the livability of a space? What does that matter to trails and the communities that they're in?
I would say that living along a river, I've lived in Cincinnati my whole life. I was born and raised there. I've been playing on this river ever since I was a little child. My grandparents had a trailer in Patriot, Indiana, and every weekend I'd go down there and mess around in the river. A lot of folks are afraid of the river, and I think the reason why folks are afraid of the river is every year you get that spring weather where it's 75 degrees out and everybody wants to go kayaking, and they don't realize that the water temperature is not ready yet. And so every single year, it never fails, somebody passes away, and that creates a fear within the community of the river. And so me as a paddler, I'm trying to support a different mindset about what the river's importance really is to our communities. And I'll keep paddling. I'm not going to stop doing it to help to connect all these river towns along the Ohio River. It runs through me. I've been on this river my entire life, and so I think the important thing is to connect people like we have in this room right now, to be able to successfully create a waterway that the Ohio Riverway is to be.
One of the conclusions that we drew from the 12 Rivertown Review reports that we worked on along the Ohio River is that the river is that common thread, that is that outdoor recreation opportunity that ties us together as a region. But as sub-regions within the Ohio River, we have unique opportunities in each of the communities. And those communities have tributaries, they have the main river, they have individual trail systems. Whenever you have trail systems of any type, land-based or water-based, that promotes a quality of life. And a quality of life is a healthy environment for all ages if you design it correctly. So outdoor recreation is a component that is a driving industry in our economy, and we need to continue to recognize that opportunity in our local areas.
Yeah, I will just completely echo the quality of life sentiment when it comes to livability and economic development around trail infrastructure. You see people of all ages looking to move to places where they have easy connectivity, easy access to outdoor spaces and outdoor trails. And so when we look at developing these places, right, we don't just want to develop the space and walk away and say we've done the thing. After we create this beautiful space that we want people to come to, how are we programming it? How are we connecting that to our city centers, to other park spaces, right? So you have to look at it from, again, a really holistic lens of it's not just build it and they will come, but we build it and then we continue to connect and we continue to grow. And all of those things directly impact quality of life and livability in places, and also directly impact whether or not there's private or public investment that continues to grow from those spaces as well.
In terms of just relating our work, all of our work to economic growth, just a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is, I think that when communities invest in public spaces, and I know when I went for my run this morning, I know there's some new investment that's going to be, there's current investment, but there's new investment happening here in Madison. It gives confidence to the private sector to come in behind that. And every one of our communities, from Sydney all the way down to the city of Hamilton on the Great Miami River, every one of those communities has put their flag in the ground and said we're going to make some kind of a public park on the river. And as you know, sometimes people take heat for that because communities have a lot of needs, whether it's, every kind of need, whether it's new, and so when they do that, I think it's important. And so in our communities, we've seen public investment means we're going to get greater private investment. The other example from economic growth, and I thought about this on the way down, but we've got all these old buildings on the Great Miami River that have outlived their past use. One of the buildings is an old coal plant that is in Miamisburg, Ohio. A developer from Buffalo bought that company, or that 200-acre property last year, and they're turning that property into a 200-acre mixed-use development. It's going to have housing, it's going to have a riverfront brew pub on it, and it's right across from the Great Miami River Recreation Trail. And one of the reasons they're excited about that site is they know not that people that can live there can hop on the trail, but when people get off the trail, they can go have a beer. I say this because in about 2 years, I mentioned Becky before, right next to Great Parks in Hamilton County, there's a coal plant that is going to be closed in a couple of years where the Great Miami meets the Ohio River. And I'm hoping that we could give you a tour of the development of Miamisburg as a nudge to what could happen on that site. I don't know what's going to happen there, but yeah, that's, the Ohio River has these same opportunities, probably times 10 compared to our river, but I think it's the opportunity for economic development is to repurpose buildings for cool new stuff.
Thank you. Now, one of the reasons, I'm hearing some themes about how it improves the places that we live, and one of the reasons I feel like I personally got into working with the National Park Service, and particularly our program, is this idea that, especially in our public places, that all places are for all people, and that there's a role that these places play in our lives, not just for where we work and work and live. This is also where we play. These are places that we heal. These are places that we become fully human. And I just wanted to ask for our panelists here, what does it look like to make these places for all people? What role does inclusion have in building trails in our communities?
I think we have a ways to go on this, but I think that to your question, Moses, I think communities are getting better at it. And I think part of that is making sure that when a community has a public space, whether it's on the river or not, that they really try to do their best to hire good companies or good professional expertise who's going to pull people in the community to ask them what they want to see. I mean, it's kind of human nature to, sometimes we all think, well, I know how that's supposed to look, right? But there's got to be a process where you're pulling people in, you're saying, look, we have an opportunity to make a community investment that will be here for decades. How do you think that should look? And it's not rocket science, but we need to do a lot of that before we make the investment.
Yeah, I love this question because I think we have a long way to go before we can say that our public spaces are truly inclusive, not just regionally and locally, but throughout the entire U.S. And I think we need to start to look at why that is, right? And start to focus on the reasons that people aren't coming to or aren't using spaces for whatever reason that might be. Whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's education, whether it's historical erasure, right? And start to dive into those things a little bit more deeply. So one of the ways with the Tennessee River Line that we're starting to do that is really through programming. So we have worked very heavily with a man called Jerry James, who I think has worked with a handful of people with the Ohio Riverway. Jerry is a black man who is very heavily invested in the paddling and outdoor community. And over the years, I think he's recognized he is one of the few leaders of color that he sees in a room. And so Jerry came to us with a program in mind called the Paddle Sports Leadership Academy as a stepping stone to develop leaders of color so that they can in turn go back into their communities, start to develop programming so that it becomes a safe space, right? I think that if you walk into a room and you are the only person who looks like you, or you are the only person who has the same experience as you, it can be intimidating, and it makes people not want to come back again. So I think we have to start looking at the reasons why people aren't using something and start to really take down those barriers so that you can actually open doors and not just say that they are open.
In my opinion, inclusion is everybody. And when we look at trails, it is a healthy alternative for all ages, young people to old people. And so when you have a network of trails occurring within your community or planning trails, you want to definitely look at that opportunity to how to connect to your elderly facilities, your hospital, your schools, your low-income neighborhoods with spurs of your trail system so that everybody can be included in this outdoor recreation venue.
I'll echo your comment on education. I think that's extremely important for folks to be educated about the river or the hiking trail or even the biking trail. Education is probably number one key to making sure that people feel safe on the river. The question I get a lot is, how do you deal with the barges? Well, barges are really rather easy to deal with. You communicate with them through a VHF radio if you're out traveling down the river, but the communities that align the Ohio River are completely different than the Mississippi, say. The Mississippi does not have any riverfronts. The Ohio River, every small town you go through has some type of riverfront where people can go and recreate. And so I feel like education is the key to us being able to get more people out recreation along the river, and to educate folks that it's not this big dangerous body of water that you're going to get sucked into a hole. If you don't play it right, you might, but it's not a scary place to be in. I think I would have to say that education starts with the youth and the adventure crew, which there's somebody here from there. Okay, Bill's back there, yeah. Adventure Crew is a really good organization that helps educate the inner city youth about waterways and hiking and biking and cycling and that's an opportunity for these young folks to be leaders in our community at some point in time as they get older. And that's an organization that I've actually raised money for when I paddled the entire Mississippi 2 years ago. And I feel like they are educating our youth that are going to be our future leaders. And I think that it's a great place to start is community and the youth. And I also would like to serve with, he had mentioned elderly folks or people who have mental health conditions, to take them out and show them that there's healing properties in nature. And with these healing properties that nature has, like if I took somebody in a canoe run just up the river a little bit, they're going to see great blue herons, they're going to see bald eagles, turtles. There's all kinds of wildlife along the river. And folks say, oh, this is the dirtiest body of water in the United States, and that's not true. I counted 256 bald eagles from Pittsburgh all the way to the Mississippi River. So I know that if we've got all these birds that are feeding off the fish in this water, this is not the dirtiest body of water in America. It's actually probably one of the cleaner ones. And my mission is to help keep the waterways clean by aligning with folks like the Onion Bag Project. Actually, next week, he and I are going to paddle from Ironton all the way to Cincinnati to install a few onion bag boxes so that people can go out and collect trash and keep our riverways clean, because that's another really important mission of all of us in this room, is to help keep these riverways clean, help keep the trails clean, so that people can safely and recreate along the rivers.
Thanks, Joe. I think. Well, no, I think you're taking me to my last question. And before I ask it, I just want to remind you all that I do have a little time set aside to have you direct your questions to our panelists as well. So if you want to prepare that for a second. And they'll be here for the rest of the summit, so I encourage you to approach them and ask your questions directly as well. But my last question about trails in the communities, and ultimately the places that they connect. These places celebrate the most significant natural, cultural resources that we have. Sometimes even the strongholds of each community's identity and the places where we work and live. What are the challenges that we're facing to maintain and care for these trails and those places? And in a big picture, how might we approach that? And how might we approach working through those?
Like I just said before, I think education is number one, and Adventure Crew is doing that work in Cincinnati. And yeah, I believe that the youth of America are going to be sitting in a room like we are today. And if there's one person that makes a difference in that youth's life, such as Brewster Rhodes or Bill Swanson back there, I think that's what's going to help communities to be able to connect to each other better, is to get them when they're young.
This is a constant challenge, I think, for all communities, whether they're on a waterway or a hiking trail. And that is, how do you continue to promote your community and link to that great natural resource without turning the visitor off? And the Trail Town programs across the country have tried to address that. The Rivertown Review program that we've developed tries to address that. The worst thing that can happen in your community is when a visitor comes to your community and they ask the wait staff what's there to do, and they say, nothing. So the solution to that is the Tourism Bureau, Chamber of Commerce, working with the service industry, your frontline staff, and getting them out to actually use the recreation resources in your community, to educate your frontline staff on what your community has to offer, so that they can actually direct the visitors to your community to great recreation resources. That's one way, working together, we can help address the constant challenge. There's nothing to do in this town.
I think a couple of challenges that I have noticed working with the Tennessee River line start in the beginning and then towards the end, right? It's that initial buy-in of recreation is tourism, is economic development, right? They are one and the same. I think that in other parts of the United States, further out west, right, that's an easily accepted, adoptable notion that those things are all the same. It's less widely accepted here in the Southeast and the Midwest. And so I think being able to educate communities that all of these things can work together in tandem and they're not all separate is really important. And then I think once you get the buy-in, it's after you build it, what's the destination management, right? It's more than just maintenance, but that's also understanding the kind of impact that your community wants to hold, and that the kind of impact that it can actually stand over time. And so I think you have to, again, look at it from that holistic lens of what are you doing every step of the way to get where you want to be, and also be able to manage it year over year in a way that's healthy for your community.
I might give one opportunity and one challenge. One opportunity, I know the Ohio Riverway is going after the National Water Trail designation, right, Worcester? I think that's awesome, and I know you're going to get it. We were Ohio's first National Water Trail, and my wife is in Cleveland. The Cuyahoga River got it last year, and then I said, yeah, but we're the only Ohio water trail that hasn't caught on fire. That's what I said. So that's kind of funny. She didn't think it was good, but I think it's the good thing about that is that when you get that, it's going to be one more way that every community can connect themselves, and you're going to use that in everything that you put out, whether it's Madison, India, saying I'm on the National Water Trail, or on your social media. So I know you're going to get it, and I think it's going to be cool. We're going to have a National Water Trail on the Ohio River, and then obviously connected, from north-south to the Great Miami, and then the Cuyahoga as well. So it's a good thing. But here's one challenge. We all know this. All this work takes time and effort and money. On the Great Miami River Recreation Trail, we have it's like 99 miles from Sydney all the way down to Hamilton. And then that goes down to the Great Parks, is helping us all the way down the Great Miami or the Ohio River. But we've got funding that's basically almost got us a mile away from connecting Sydney all the way to Hamilton, right? But there's this gap that we just got funded between Middletown and Hamilton, 50,000 people in Middletown, 60,000 in Hamilton. And it turns out the original engineering to design that trail, the river has eroded that original design. And so now the money that community got to fill in that gap, they're worried that if they use that money, that the trail's going to fall in the river. And so we are going back to the state of Ohio and saying, thank you for the money. We got to figure out a different way to engineer this thing. And we're really, I think we're going to be able to make it work. But this stuff can be hard. It can be hard. And that's also why you need a bunch of different collaborators in the room to help, because the city of Monroe, where this trail, if they build it, was going to fall into the river, They thankfully they came to all of us and said, hey, we need help. And so that's why the Ohio Riverway I think is important, because there's going to be times when you all need to help each other. You're already doing it, but there's going to be times when you just need help because it benefits the people next to you if you ask them.
Thank you. I just want to invite some folks from here participating with us to ask questions to our panelists. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Yeah.
How do you think social media works in on all this? Everybody's on Facebook.
How does social media play into all this? Any panelists?
I mean, I think social media, if you're not using it, you obviously should be, right? It's a really easy way to connect with the general public, but it's also a really wonderful way to start to build your organization and trails personality, to start to create that community. And so social media is such a big part of how people communicate today, and I think it's really integral to being successful. Websites are obviously really important, but people are looking at and using their phones on social media every single day, all throughout the day. And so that's the easiest and most continuous way to be able to connect with people that you're hoping to connect with. So use it.
Thank you. Any other questions? What? Let me hit back over here.
Thanks. Who are you? Hi, I'm Sean with Barringer Crawford Museum. So, one quick question. So, tips or lessons learned from starting a trail. If you had one piece of advice to give anybody starting a new trail system, what would it be?
I'll repeat that one more time as I walk back. What are some tips for starting a trail? What might that be for any of our panelists here? Russ.
Immediately when you start planning a trail system is you have to look at the whole picture, the big picture, and invite all the different potential user groups as well as governmental agencies, etc., and bring them together. Key to a successful project is having a friends group supportive beyond the original plan. That you have to have that ongoing eyes, ears, and feet on the trail or paddling on the river to help maintain that presence and promote it. So the friends group is one of the critical parts of this process.
I think we have time for one more question. I'll start over back here, and if you have any other questions, feel free to approach our panelists.
Hi, I'm Brad with Tri-State Trails in Cincinnati, Ohio. My question was kind of a follow-up to a question about inclusivity. So obviously trails have a lot of recreation and quality of life benefits, but how do you think about trails as like a transportation option? There's a lot of households in this corridor that don't have access to a vehicle, so thinking about those folks and really transportation equity. So
I think that question was about transportation equity for communities to connect people to places.
I think that trails are and greenways are a wonderful way to create that connectivity from neighborhoods to different parts of town. I don't drive a car most of the time in Knoxville because I'm riding my bike, and that's a personal preference, right? And so I think that you're seeing more and more individuals wanting that just in general. And so I think that it's also, as you said, a way to become more inclusive, right? If people don't have access to car transportation, but they're able to afford a bike, right? If we create infrastructure where that's actually something that they can use on a daily basis in a way that's safe, you've had an avenue for inclusion that didn't exist before. So overall, I think that looking at trails as transportation is a way to go for sure.
I think it's a great question. I was just saying that real quick. We're building a new trail on part of the Great Miami Riverway. We did it with the EDA, the US EDA, and one of the reasons they funded that was because there's probably 5,000 to 6,000 manufacturing jobs in this one section of the trail, and there's some housing, kind of older stock housing around there. and that was part of the pitch, and it helped. It helped. So I think if you look at places that are industrialized, where trails could kind of fit, sometimes it can help.
And I'll contribute my own response as well. I think it's really important that it does play a role in transportation. In short, it gets people places, trails. And designing that, each route might be different. And the best way we design those places is by talking to the folks that will use it. If we design trails for routes that we personally don't use, we better get someone in the room that will. And I think as we speak to those communities that do, we'll gather insights that we never would have thought of. And I think that's a really key part of making sure that we are inclusive with that design by speaking directly to those that these trails serve. We're coming up in our last few minutes here, and I'm sure you have a couple more questions for our panelists, but again, I invite you to approach them personally and direct them. But I want to give 30 seconds to each of them just to give one parting message for you all, and thank you for joining me.
I just want to say thanks for everybody for putting the work in on the Ohio Riverway. What you do matters. It helps each community on the Riverway, but it also really helps the work that I'm doing just north of here on the Great Miami, because there's opportunities short and long term to really market this region as a place where you have all this great quality of life. And so we're just as a partner, current, future partner, I'm grateful for your work. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really wonderful to be in a room of a similar organization really looking towards the same kind of goals. I will just say that the best work that we can do is truly in partnership and collaborative, and getting as many people at the table that need to be there to be able to truly have a product, a system that meets the needs of an entire community in an entire region. And that can be really hard, but it's awesome to see the work that you all have done so far, and just keep doing it.
I'll just echo the previous comments. It's important that with any project that you bring all the players together for that common vision, and the neighborhoods and communities that are impacted by a potential idea need to be involved in this process. And please involve the youth. You're passing this on to the next generation, whatever this is. And so it has to be inclusive for all ages, and the Ohio Riverway is doing a great process in that regard.
If you look around the room right now, we are all representatives of community, and I think that the Ohio Riverway has done a really good job at bringing all of these communities together. And it's good to see so many people in a room like this, because I didn't know what I was coming to. I knew I was coming to a summit, but I didn't have a clue as to who I was going to meet here. I've made so many connections since yesterday that I hope that you folks come up to me now and talk to me about what some of my dreams and aspirations are in connecting all of the river towns along the Ohio River, connecting with the Ohio Riverway, as well as Adventure Crew in Cincinnati. I think that together, like he had just said, if we educate the youth properly, we're going to have this river trail in front of us for the rest of our lives, and it'll keep passing on down. The next kid's going to get an experience along this river that's going to change their life, and they're going to end up being in a room like we're in today, where we can all connect together. So I think the Ohio Riverway has done a really excellent job in getting everybody together. So
thank you, Joe. Let's give it up for the mission.
So we're excited that we have these federal agencies here, and Brewster and the others in the Ohio Riverway, their success and collaboration are going to help to ensure that we reach our goals. So similar to the last panel, we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are professionally, as well as their work. I'll ask some questions to open us up, and then turn it over to you all to ask your questions as well. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with Julie Thomas from the U.S. Coast Guard.
Hi, good morning. Julie Thomas, U.S. Coast Guard. I'm attached to the Marine Safety Detachment up in Cincinnati, Ohio. So some of you might know me from there. If you're from closer to Louisville, you know our parent unit, Sector Louisville. So I have the pleasure of working under Captain Heather Matterton. I've been in about 14 years now. Been in Ohio for 2, originally from Dayton, Ohio. So very happy to to help educate people and be part of assisting with projects like this. And my cup of tea or specialty is what we call waterways management. So for things like Riverfest, Paddlefest, Red Bull, the flu talk that came through, we help facilitate those river closures and reopenings and basically those planning meetings and then the stages that go on throughout those.
Good morning, I'm Brandon Brummett with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out of Louisville District. Those of y'all looking in your program, Marion Divers from Pittsburgh District was supposed to be here, so I'm pinch hitting for her. But I'm our district's outreach coordinator, so I see a lot of friends out in the audience and folks I've talked with about different types of projects that we're getting started, and folks from the Ohio River Basin Alliance and some other folks here. So glad to be here and talk about a little bit about what we do involving the river.
I'm Andrea Shutmer with the National Weather Service in Louisville, and just here to talk to you today about what we can do with our weather forecast services and river forecast services for you. That's always a free service to anyone along the river or the public in general. So just wanted to share that information and how you can utilize it.
Hello, I'm Vic Elam. I'm with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm the refuge manager at Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge, which spans 362 river miles. We start out up in Pennsylvania and end up down in Kentucky. We've got 2 islands in Kentucky, 2 in Pennsylvania, and 20 in West Virginia. So we manage all those islands for wildlife purposes and also make them available for recreation.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Annette Schumard. If we haven't met yet, it's nice to meet you. I'm here representing 2 different agencies today, ORSANCO, which stands for Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission, and then also our foundation for Ohio River Education. I'm really excited to be here representing partnership and collaboration because it truly is the key to ORSANCO's success and the reason that we've been such a viable organization throughout the years. ORSANCO is an interstate agency that's authorized to operate water quality programs along the Ohio River for 8 member states. And our mission continues to be protecting Ohio River water quality. And the key to our success it truly is the agency's collaborative approach. We cross multi-state agencies, federal EPA regions, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, USGS, and we have a vast network of partners and committees that consist of watershed groups, environmental agencies that all come together with this core purpose of protecting the Ohio River. And no other agency out there brings these entities together like ORSANCO. We also have a foundation, like I said, Foundation for Ohio River Education, that's known as FOR. And Heather Mayfield is here. She is the original mastermind behind that floating classroom program that she put together. It's a multi-million-dollar project, and we're trying to get back to that, like in our heyday. We have 3 core areas that we focus on at ORSANCO. It's water quality monitoring and assessment, early detection and emergency response, and then my department, which is communication and public involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette, and the rest of the panelists. Just to echo what Annette said, I think we're not always aware just how valuable we have it to have ORSANCO. So there's not many ORSANCOs in the country. Back in 1948, the 6 border states plus New York and Virginia, part of our watershed, got together and said, we need to monitor this river holistically, which is pretty unique. Typically it's done piecemeal, state by state, or region by region. So the folks at the federal level got together and said, how can we best manage the resources of the Ohio River and the watershed? And they formed ORSANCO. So it's a multi-state compact, as Annette said, but it's really rare and unique throughout the country. So we're fortunate to have this body, this group, looking at the river from Pittsburgh to Cairo and looking at the 14-state basin area. As we are with Fish and Wildlife, NOAA and the National Weather Service, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Coast Guard, among others. So we have U.S. EPA, USGS. So we'd like to them to be a little bit more specific on any projects they're working on in the basin and just how their agency is relegated or delegated to work on the Ohio River as a whole. So if you could tell us, Vic, first with just how Fish and Wildlife divides up the basin or decides on projects in the basin, and then if you could give us some specifics about projects you're working on, and in particular projects in which these communities and these people who are extremely eager and energetic and getting involved, how they might be able to help out with your agency if there's any opportunities.
Thank you, Chris. I guess to start out with, probably the best thing for me to help you understand is the mission statement of my agency is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, and plants and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. And I had that memorized, but I messed it up trying to say it. There's a lot there. There's a lot of room to wiggle around, do a lot of different things. And I have a lot of leeway as a manager to kind of shape our program however I see fit. And, one of the big things that I try to do is work with public perception, try to get people out, try to get them to appreciate nature, appreciate the refuge, appreciate the river, appreciate nature in general, because basically, so much of the way things are nowadays is people are so kind of stuck indoors, stuck to their phone screen or computer screen, or especially youth these days. Kids don't get out, seems like. So, I try to kind of do programs that get kids out. I encourage kind of that. We do a lot of outdoor education. I've set up a kayak challenge, which is basically 20 of our islands has a sign on the island that you gotta get to the island, find the sign, take a selfie with all the signs, and bring them back to our office. If you can show us that you did it, then you get a prize. It's more about the accomplishment of doing it, but it's a way of getting people out. I'm working on building a trail on one of our islands. It's like a 200-acre island, so it'll be a pretty sizable trail. We got to get started on it. Working on things like that. Also working on access, and I also try to help out local communities and give them opportunities. And I applaud the mayor here at Madison. He was saying he does a lot of the work on the riverfront with private money, and that is incredible. A lot of the communities that I work with up and down the river really don't have that resource available to them. So a lot of times they need to leverage federal money. So I kind of act as a conduit for opportunities for these communities to put in things like kayak launches, boat ramps, using Federal Lands Access Program. There's other agencies I try to connect them with. Federal Highways has several programs, and several, also within my own agency, there's a section called the Wildlife and Sport Fisheries Restoration that takes, is it Dingle Johnson money, I think it is, from kind of taxes on boat fuel, boat sales, things like that. They gather that money and divvy it back out to the states. The states, they kind of control it where you got to compete for that money, but communities can work with states to get funding for boat ramps and things like that. But also I work with, trying to, everybody here pretty much is downstream from me. So, what happens up in my neck of the woods impacts y'all down here. And I also work with trying to find ways to clean up the river, clean up the water, prevent mishaps, working with Orsenco fair amount, anything we can do to prevent problems from contaminating the water before it gets to y'all.
Thank you, Vic. Anybody do the kayak challenge that Vic spoke about yet?
David did it.
All right, David, Brewster, maybe get a group together for next year.
David, I think, is the first. Is that right to complete it?
Yep. Well, my wife was the first. The two of us did it, and she was the first one to get to Manchester. So.
Excellent. Now, how many people participated in Orsenco's River Sweep? Excellent. So we're going to ask Orsenco and Annette to talk a little bit about their projects in which community members can get involved, and we'll go down the list with.
Thanks, Chris. So our programs in our Foundation for Ohio River Education teach river science and promote stewardship. We have a floating classroom that gets students out of the classroom and on the water, teaching them what it's like to be an Orsenco river scientist, giving them that experience that they wouldn't have otherwise. We have a River Watchers program, that's our citizen science program, where we work with schools and train teachers and their class to test water quality and evaluate the health of their waterway. Our Ohio River Sweep program that Chris just mentioned runs March through October, and volunteers remove trash all along the Ohio River and its tributaries. We provide the supplies and resources, and we'll ship shirts, gloves, and bags to you. Typically, we recruit about 5,000 volunteers a year at about 100 different locations, but we're looking to double those numbers. That's our goal for the next 2 years, is to double those numbers, and we love Brewster's idea of creating like a healthy community competition to see which community can collect the most trash in a year. So if you're interested in that, get with me after the talk. And then lastly, our Life Below the Waterline is a 2,000-gallon mobile aquarium that we fill with local fish to highlight fish diversity and a healthy ecosystem. All of our foundation programs, they foster an appreciation for the river and create an experience for the students out on the river, just working to change the negative perception that seems to be around it. And I think that by creating experiences and immersing yourself in that, you change your perception. Okay. Okay.
Hi there, I'm Andrea again. Just want to start by asking, how many people use water.weather.gov to look up rivers levels on the Ohio River? Hands there. That's us. We send out those observations and forecasts daily. We make sure that data is flowing for you all. And that website is actually getting ready to change and be more up to date and look a lot like the USGS website, if you use theirs at all. But that is us. Our mission is to protect lives and property, and part of doing that is providing those river levels and river forecasts to you daily. Beyond that, whenever we get in times of high water, our responsibility is to also send out the watches and warnings along the Ohio River. And then, as well as things that you can get involved with, we do provide specific weather support for events. This was the first year that we, I think, officially supported the Ohio River paddle. The 10-day paddle there, so that was great working with Brewster and his crew to get the forecast together and support a large group on the Ohio River for multiple days. So if you have events like that along the Ohio River, we encourage you to contact your local weather service office. And it's not just me out of Louisville. There's 5 weather service offices that serve the Ohio River, including Paducah's Weather Service Office, Wilmington's Weather Service Office, Pittsburgh office, and then West Virginia also. So there's a number of us, and if you need that contact information, you can always come through me to see which Weather Service Office serves yours. But it was a great collaborative experience supporting the paddle, because we actually had multiple weather services involved, and also the Ohio River Forecast Center. All of the river forecasts do come from the Ohio River Forecast Center, and then at the local weather service offices, we distribute those and interpret those for you all locally. So again, that was a great opportunity there to support this group. Another thing to think about whenever you're thinking about weather support is any event that would involve public safety. We can do as much as sending emails about weather forecasts for a specific event, so being embedded in an EOC or a public safety capacity for any event. For example, the Madison Regatta, we have an on-site meteorologist with the public safety people there for the regatta to support them and give weather reports and telewarnings and whatnot. So just a couple things to think about as you're thinking about events along the Ohio River. I think I'll pass it off for now.
All right, well, good morning. Brandon Brummett with the Corps of Engineers out of the Louisville District. Trying to narrow down our involvement with the Ohio River and Ohio River Basin is probably the toughest thing anybody's ever asked me to do. It might even be tougher than trying to raise two teenage daughters. But the Corps of Engineers has a long history going back with the Ohio River Basin and the Ohio River even back into the 1800s. Starting in the late 1800s with navigational assistance on the Ohio River, building the system of locks and dams, which have been modernized, and over the years, the Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act in 1899 involving permitting. Fast forwarding a little bit to 1937, after the 37 flood, that's when all of the Corps of Engineers districts across the country actually got a civil works mission involving in flood risk management, and that's something that we still continue to this day. We do a lot of projects throughout the Ohio River Basin. Our four main core is in C-O-R-E, core. Mission areas are flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, watershed planning, and commercial navigation. So we have a lot of other missions that are attached to those, recreation being one of those, hydropower being one of those, water supply being another one. But typically we don't get direct funding to do those types of projects. They're usually an offshoot of like a flood risk management or navigation mission. So when we are involved with doing recreational trail construction, or any of y'all have been to Cincinnati and the Cincinnati riverfront, that was a project that we did construct, but it was because Congress told us to. So years and years ago, I actually talked with the mayor last year about this, but I was the project manager for a riverfront development study we did here in Madison. And the idea was hopefully that Congress would then take that study and then tell us to build something, but it never made it that far. But we've got a lot of projects going on. One of the key things that's going on right now, as part of the administration's Justice 40 movement, we've got two authorities that were identified at our headquarters level, where we're trying to reach out and network and work with economically disadvantaged communities to help solve some of their water resources needs. One of those is called our Floodplain Management Services program, and just as the name implies, it has to do with helping communities come up with better uses for their floodplain, questions about things that may involve flooding. And I know Mayor Cerisi's here somewhere. There you are. We've talked about trying to get one of those studies going there in West Point, and right now I think it's kind of hung up in the budgeting stages, because we're all still trying to find out if we're going to come back to work in mid-November or not. But that's kind of thrown a little bit of a mud in the water of our crystal ball, I guess, for what our funding is going to look like. But that's one authority. There's no cost share for that program, so consequently it usually gets, the funding goes pretty quickly. But I'll be around at least until lunchtime today if folks have questions about that. The other program that was identified is called our Planning Assistance to States program. It's generally very well funded at the headquarters level. The key is kind of in the first part of its name. It's for planning assistance only. We can't do detailed design. We can't do construction under that authority. Normally there's a 50-50 cost share with that authority. But in the Water Resources Development Act of 2022 that was passed, Congress said for economically disadvantaged communities that cost share is waived.
So, and if you're curious as to what defines an economically disadvantaged community, they sent out a 2-page guidance memo with all these criteria that you have to meet. But the easiest thing we could do, and after it listed all of these things, then it said, or you can go to the Council for Environmental Quality's Economic Justice Screener. So if you type in CEJST screening tool on Google, it'll take you right to it. You type in your community, and then if your community shows up as shaded on the map, you're considered economically disadvantaged, and so therefore there would be no cost share for that planning assistance to state study. So if you all have questions about that, we'd be happy to talk with you. I'd be happy to talk with you. I've got business cards in the back. Tell you how to get hooked up with those programs. We've got a few other things going on. I know we helped Orba with their strategic plan a few years ago, utilizing the Planning Assistance to States program. We worked to help with the recreational trail, Ohio River Trail planning from Portsmouth down to West Point through that Planning Assistance to States study. So it's a pretty useful tool and a useful thing that's out there for communities to take advantage of.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep mine brief because it's Coast Guard and what are we doing on Ohio River, right? No, I'm kidding. No, but really there are people who are kind of surprised that there's Coast Guard presence on the Ohio River, and we do wear multiple hats. We actually work very closely with these other organizations, especially National Weather Service and Army Corps. And there's certain things where Army Corps and our authorities almost overlap, but then when it comes to that money question, it's kind of based on who has that final authority. That's which organization is going to kind of spearhead that project. So I know a lot of people ask about like derelict vessels and things like that, and it gets into the weeds with legal definitions of things and talking about pollution risks, but that's always one of those questions I think both our offices field, and usually the answers don't make people happy, so I'm sorry about that. But essentially Coast Guard, we're here because we regulate the commercial vessels, commercial facilities that do commerce with those vessels. So like your Valvoline, your Marathons, I'm not trying to single anybody out, but just give you some examples. And you know, the tugs, barges, all those kinds of vessel traffic coming through. So one of the big things that our goal is to facilitate safety of life, safety of property on the river, facilitate safe commerce. And then we want the waterway ideally to remain open so that the boating community as a whole, including recreational vessel users, can have access. So one of those things that we do is we try to work closely with other government entities or agencies. If you're a local government and you're trying to figure out how to get some funding for things and articulate things, we do have some grants through Department of Homeland Security that might be able to help bolster those projects. I am not the person who speaks grants, but I can get you their information if you want some more information about that. Another thing that we do from kind of like everybody's side is, once again, I called it waterways management earlier. So marine events, those river fests, the Red Bull Flutogs, those types of events where it attracts a lot of interest and potential vessel users coming on the waterway, be it paddlecraft or powercraft. If it's going to create what could potentially be an unusual hazard or create extra hazards within that area, we'd like to know about it. We need to know about it because then we can put out those broadcast notice to mariners so that hopefully the tugs and barges don't wind up interfering with those events. Same thing, fireworks, you know, we let people know that, hey, there's going to be fireworks over this part of the river, and hopefully we don't have people calling in false flare calls, you know, stretching resources thin, things like that. So the main way that we know is by you all letting us know. And so there's a website called Homeport, and that's the main way that we kind of find out about things because there's only so many of us and it's a lot of river that we cover. So I know we've been talking a lot about education today, and so part of my role today is to help educate you all and let you know that these things exist and we have these resources that are available. It doesn't cost any money to put in your application for Homeport to tell us a marine event is happening. It's just letting us know what's happening, and we can have an overall comprehensive safety conversation. And if it is something large enough where we need to incorporate National Weather Service or something like that, we can help with those planning stages. And I think Brewster, I'm going to plug you because I know we've worked very closely for a few years. And, we don't try to make it harder. We just try to make sure it's happening safely. That's the goal.
Well, tell them about Paddle Fest and how you helped us make the big decision.
Well, do you want me to tell about that? Paddle Fest, I think it was 2 years ago. There were some forecasts coming through saying there was a chance for inclement weather, thunderstorms coming through. Once again, these events, we knew about it quite a bit in advance. It's in the Code of Federal Regulations. This event is scheduled to happen every year. So for us, it was a fairly routine process. But once again, weather, no offense, wound up rearing its weathery head. And so we had that conversation with Brewster. I actually had it with him on site, and we wound up having to cancel the event. And that's one of those things, unfortunately, when we're looking at that whole picture, weather on the river and thousands of people, if that system moves over and you have all those people on the water, what kind of hazards are we presenting to them? What happens in terms of how do we get these people out of the water? Where's the pull-out points? And so, fortunately, it was a joint discussion, but we had that conversation saying, you know what, the safer thing, the reasonable thing is to just cancel the event this year. Hope for better weather again in the future, but take a look at that picture of what resources do we have on the river, what's coming at us, and how do we make sure that these users are safe. So.
Excellent, thank you. So, knowing firsthand, Brewster does place safety as the #1 priority of Paddle Fest and any other recreational opportunities, and certainly the Coast Guard plays a role in that, National Weather Service plays a role, Orsenco always monitors for E. coli and other potential threats to it, so it's definitely a collaborative approach. I want to reiterate Vic's program with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the grants for docks, marina enhancements, things like that. Reiterate what Brandon said about communities applying for planning assistance to states grants. Great opportunities, particularly if you can get that match waived or find ways to match. And then also reiterate that ORW's digital guide that takes into account weather service data, river level from the Corps, and Orsenco's water quality data, another collaborative example. So all of you guys are U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, as well as the National Weather Service. Can you speak to how the Ohio River work may be different in other parts of the country with your colleagues, or how your colleagues in other parts of the country view the Ohio River and the Ohio River watershed, and why it's important to raise our profile at the federal level?
So, my perspective, I've been stationed Great Lakes, I've been in Alaska, I've been in the Caribbean. The Ohio River in particular is an interesting beast because there's so many jurisdictions that overlap. And so a big part of that is good working relationships between the federal entities all the way down to the local governments. And I will say in my experience, at least up in the Cincinnati region, we have some of the most cooperative and collaborative local governments and even industry agencies that come together and work together and try to say, how can we be proactive in addressing these needs, our needs? And they're not afraid to ask us if we are able to help or if we have insights or anything like that. And so I think in some areas when you do have multiple government entities overlapping and then federal agencies overlapping, sometimes it can be a bit more on the combative side. But especially within this region, I've always noted it's very cooperative, collaborative, and honestly, it helps make my job easier because you don't go into every situation feeling like it's a fight. And so it's something that I appreciate, and I think it is really special to this region.
Yeah, I think you really, it's like we're in a mind meld here. The collaboration, I think, is something that's really important. When we look at one of the Corps of Engineers' main missions, it's the flood risk management mission, and that's what a lot of people associate with the Corps of Engineers is, hey, they build levees and they help keep people from flooding and that sort of thing, which is great. We want to be known for that. But over the years, we've started to figure out that in some cases the government agencies, one didn't know what another one was doing because, shocker of all shocker,
two branches of the federal government might not communicate with each other. So in the state of Ohio in 2005, they debuted a test program called the Silver Jackets program. And it was, the goal was to get all of the state and federal agencies that dealt with flooding to meet on a recurring basis and talk about what they're doing and figure out where they could partner up and share resources. In 2006, that program expanded into Indiana as the second state, and now there's a program in every state. And the cool thing about all of this is I got to start working on the program in 2007 when it was still maybe not in infancy, but in toddler learning to walk stage, and have got to watch the program go from walking to running, and it really all started here in the Ohio River Basin. And so I think that's something that we can all pat ourselves on the back on. Is Ohio River Basin Alliance has been working to continue to make strides to unite folks within the basin, working with partners like Orsenco, working with Orbicray, working with the Corps of Engineers, and a lot of us. You know, that Silver Jackets team has really been instrumental. And so, you know, several of the folks sitting up here and around this room have heard me talk about that and participate in with those teams. But again, the key is really collaboration. You know, we try really hard to you know, if something comes in and it's not necessarily in our wheelhouse, to try and connect somebody with whoever it may be in their wheelhouse. So, you know, it's really all about trying to serve the folks here within the basin and try and partner as much as we can.
Well, I think from the forecast side, the Ohio River Basin is kind of unique in just the diversity of river forecasting and flood forecasting that we have. I don't think all areas of the country have this dense network of tributaries in addition to a big river, and so we can see anything from, you know, a lower slow rise on the Ohio River to faster rises on the tributaries to flash flooding, and some that just occurred in this county here. Actually, this past year, that was flash flooding that was actually deadly. So just that variety of forecasts and the challenges that communicating the forecasts as well as the warning information goes is, I think, very unique to this area, and something that, again, we collaborate with our federal partners on what the best messages are, how to convey that information, where to put string gauges in the right places so that we can see what's happening and forecast as accurately as possible.
So how this is different than other places, I guess. My career up to this point was always west of the Mississippi. And most of the refuges I worked on out there were pretty much like, say, 20,000 acres in a contiguous block that we managed for waterfowl production or waterfowl migration corridors and things like that. And so I applied for this job kind of looking for something different, because I'd done waterfowl management for like 20 odd years. And it's like, let's try something different. And I got it. It's definitely something different. So, you know, our primary focus is freshwater mussel management, protections, and you know, all our islands. When we buy an island, basically we get the original footprint of the island before the river was, before locks and dams were put on the river. So the river was, you know, like an average of like 2 foot deep or something like that historically. And so the islands were a lot bigger back then. You know, it's a whole lot of difference between 2 foot and 20 foot depth. So a lot of that was once above the river is now part of the refuge, but it's underwater, and that's where the mussel habitat is. Mussels tend to congregate around the islands, so we have some tremendous habitat, and we have 8 endangered species that we're responsible for taking care of, 8 different species of mussels. One of them that was down to 2 fertile species, or 2 fertile individuals at one point in time, purple cat's paw mussel. We had brought it back from the brink of extinction.
Like I was saying earlier, Orsenco is really proud of the way that we can bring all of these organizations and entities together. our technical committee, we're regularly reporting where we sample at all the pools along the Ohio River. We're monitoring for bacteria and emerging contaminants, conducting biological surveys where we collect fish, macroinvertebrates, and vegetation. We also continually monitor for harmful algae blooms. And our organic detection system is monitoring 24/7 on average. I think there's like 600 spills that are reported a year. And we collaborate with emergency response agencies and water utilities on a consistent basis to respond to these spills. We recently saw this with the East Palestine train derailment spill, where SENCO came together, brought all the agencies involved together, and were able to communicate consistently throughout and provide assistance to the Ohio EPA. Thank you.
Thank you all. Very fortunate to have you here and here throughout the year. So we'd like to hear from you all. If you have a question, please raise your hand or stand and we will get to you. Go ahead, Rick.
Last year, Chris, you did a presentation in Lawrenceburg that was
Why don't you give the microphone?
Yep. Chris, last year you gave a presentation at the Lawrenceburg Summit about water quality in the Ohio River, and we narrowed it down to phosphates is a real problem because EPA's done a great job with the storm sewer system issues and some of the other chemical issues with industry. So we know what some of the problems are, and we know that this year we were designated as one of the most endangered rivers in America, number 2 on the list after Colorado River. So my question is, we have some federal agencies here. I'm sure other ones need to be involved, but give us advice on how we can form a coalition with other organizations to make sure that we get the federal attention and the money to really clean up the river and elevate the image, the brand of our river. So as we promote all these new marinas and trails and recreational amenities, we can point to the progress we've made in this area as well. So how do we get there? Get started, excuse me.
Yeah, so Rick was referencing the America's Watershed Initiative, or America's River Initiative out of Washington, D.C. that designated the Ohio River back in April as the second most endangered river. And we looked at that as an opportunity. To be on that list of endangered river means lots of valuable resources that have threats that need protected. So we're hoping that designation raised the federal profile, or raised the profile of the Ohio River at the federal level for much needed funding. Jordan Lubetkin from the National Wildlife Federation is going to speak to this. But panelists, any comments, insights on how the Ohio River Basin can get some attention, some resources at the federal level?
Who's got money to give away? All right.
I don't know that I have a great answer for that, but I think awareness is a big thing. Just having everybody understand the threats that are out there. There's more threats, I think, than a lot of you may understand. I can tell you, like for instance, in my area, we have a lot of fracking, and the brine that results from gas wells. It's a byproduct. You know, it's trucked all over the place in my area. Trucks overturn that. Those trucks are not labeled as, they're not placarded, so they kind of get an exemption because they're associated with energy production. So, you know, their cargo is not considered hazardous, even though it has, you know, it's salt water basically laced with all sorts of nasty chemicals and heavy metals and stuff. And so what happens when those tanks turn over, or when we have a line that's carrying that material burst and goes into the Ohio River, it doesn't float on top. You know, salt water is heavier than fresh water, so it sinks to the bottom and goes along the bottom and kills stuff that people are never aware of. It also is radioactive, so it's coming down here and it's impacting people's drinking water down here. And it's those things like that where awareness of these issues is important for everybody.
I can elaborate on that just a little bit. Thanks for getting started. One thing that's really important to us at the foundation is honestly the reason and the way that we get most of our work done is sharing resources, right? We're talking about the key to collaboration and partnerships and just coming together to share resources. We go into local communities to provide our programs. We work with the resources in the local communities to be able to do this. A lot of the things we do are very expensive. Like these programs that we're putting on are really expensive, so we're constantly looking for people to partner with to share resources and build an experience for people. I think that will really help us change the perception, the negative perception that's around the river. If you get people in it and build that experience, they'll have their own idea of what's out there. So sharing resources to answer the question. Great question.
I guess I'll speak. Got to be careful in how I answer this. I guess I'll give the official federal government executive agency legal answer first, which is we cannot lobby for funding. So we do work a lot, work closely with elected officials at the federal level so that they understand what projects we're doing. But we have to be real careful when we're talking about what funding we need and that sort of a thing, so that we're not crossing that line into lobbying. So we're executive branch employees, so we support what comes out of the funding bills and the president's budget. But with that being said, a lot of the missions that we have within the Corps of Engineers are important to a lot of people. And so we've been working with groups like the Ohio River Basin Alliance. So we can't lobby, but they can. So as they understand the projects that are here within the basin that we may or may not be involved with, they can then kind of help serve as that advocate to help reach out and say, hey, by the way, do you know how important these projects are, whether they're Corps of Engineers projects, whether it's additional funding for somebody like the USGS for their gauging network that everybody uses, things like that. Working with partners like that, if they understand what we can do or what we need to do and what we do a little bit better, then they can serve as those advocates for us. And I think that's been one of the key pieces that's been missing here in the Ohio River Basin for several years, is that coordinated entity that can kind of bring everybody together and help unify that. Hasn't always been there. There's been entities that are focused on one aspect over here, one aspect over there. And so working with folks, again, Orsenco and the Ohio River Basin Alliance, and really all of the agencies here and local governments and everybody else here working with those entities can really, that old adage of a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that's the case.
Okay, time for one or two more questions.
So you may be sorry you gave me the microphone because I have so many questions. But I grew up in Owen County, Kentucky, on the Kentucky River, Lock 3. So I do appreciate and love both rivers, and I don't want to really spend a lot of time on the Kentucky River because this is not a Kentucky River Summit, and I get that. But two questions is, first one may be short for the Fish and Wildlife, is while you're continuing to promote and bring back and protect species of different mussels and fish and stuff, is what are, if anything, are you doing for the invasive species like the Asian carp? That's really a problem for, I don't think that's new and that's not a secret to anybody, but it's a problem for the tourism industry that likes to fish and things like that. So it's really invasive. The second thing is, you had to know today at some point, and we did it before lunch, that the question would get to money. Everybody in this room, I think, has a dream, has a goal, and has a project. And I have a goal and a project for the city of Carrollton that I've leaked out a little bit, finally got it to my council members because I need support, from them, to build a marina. And so what does funding resources look like for grants for marinas? I do expect that if and when this becomes to a real project, that the city will actually obviously have money and skin in the game. I would expect to look something like a private partnership for maybe industries and a community partnership, but money as far as grants. And then if there's more than one agency that have monies available, how does it work when you secure a grant from one agency, and it's going to take some time to secure grants from other agencies, but the first one that you landed and acquired has so long to use it, but we're not ready to spend that money yet because we're trying to collect grants, if you will. So who has money available? What's the process? And often the process is a turnoff. You know, some grants just quite frankly are not worth it. But what does that look like? Who has monies available?
Excellent. So we'll elaborate on the money, the grants, etc. when you can talk to each of these folks individually afterwards. But Vic, real quick response to the invasive species question, and then we'll try to wrap up before lunch.
Okay. Yeah, we got a half hour. No, I won't be that long. The invasive species, I think you're referring to aquatic invasive species like carp. You pointed out. I mean, we deal with plant invasive species, invasive mussels like zebra mussels. You name it. There's a lot of issues out there, and it's a hard nut to crack. The carp is a big one, certainly. My agency does have we have different divisions. My division is refuges, but there's another division called fisheries and aquatic conservation, and I actually have a crew from that division that is co-located out of my office in Williamstown, West Virginia, and they are working on carp, monitoring where the carp are, trying to determine if we can do some carp control. They do get some federal funding for that. There's other divisions of that. There's another big office, I think in Illinois, near the confluence, I think, of the Ohio and Mississippi, and both of those groups work together. So they do eDNA sampling, they do electrofishing, they do netting, they do a lot to try to kind of keep an eye on what's going on with the carp and determine if we really need to do some control efforts. As far as money goes, I did mention for marinas and stuff. My agency has another division that I mentioned, the Wildlife and Sport Fisheries Restoration Division. We call it WSFR, WSFR. You can go to Fish and Wildlife Service and type in WSFR, I think, and it probably gets you there. But they have grant money available. I think they got some money from bipartisan infrastructure law to, they normally have money anyway, but I think they got some additional money to be available to communities for marinas and boat docks and things like that. If anybody wants some additional information about that, I did bring some contact info and stuff I've got over there at my table. I can share some further information for anybody that wants it.
Thank you, Vic. Lots of threats and challenges, but more opportunities and more resources, particularly at the federal level. So the Fish and Wildlife Corps will hear about national park resources as well for communities. And we'll lean on Brewster and Forrest and Mark and David to share those links with their members and their updates about resources for communities and grant programs, whether it's marinas or docks. So let's go ahead and thank our panelists for their time and expertise.
All right. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you, folks, for attending. And thank you. Let's give Ohio River Way a hand. This is a great program. I want to thank all the panelists that came before. Yeah, thank you. I love the theme of collaboration. I love what David Wick said, the power of partnerships, and that's really why we're here. Like, we're really here because we are trying to achieve something together that would absolutely be impossible if we each try to do it alone. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about Ohio River restoration writ large. I want to acknowledge also, kind of like came earlier, I love the analogy of the Ohio River as a person and treating it like that. I also would say the Ohio River and the Ohio River Basin is also like a home. That just like a home that protects you, that gives you a safe place to go, that you maybe have a family in, like if our home's crumbling and decrepit, that could be a danger. And just similarly, if the Ohio River Basin Alliance is threatened, and we heard about some of those threats earlier, like that's a threat to our communities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, I also want to actually give a hand out. We have a lot of the federal family here, the Army Corps, National Park Service, Coast Guard, or Senko, the Weather Service. Let's give a hand for them too, because I think, when we talk about the power of collaboration, the power of partnerships, the power of collective action, it's going to take, we always hear public-private. Well, it's going to take everyone from NGOs. I work for the National Wildlife Federation. Thank you, Forrest, for that general introduction. Really quickly, the National Wildlife Federation is a nonprofit organization. Many folks know us by our educational publications like Ranger Rick Magazine, but we also have an advocacy side. And as Forrest mentioned, I've spent a lot of my 19 years at the National Wildlife Federation helping put Great Lakes restoration on the map and then continuing to get that year after year investment from the federal government. So, what we'll talk about here today, and I'll try to be pretty brief because I know the lunch is getting lined up and you guys have been great. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this project is and what this is, where we are, and then where we're going. And lastly, because Ohio River Way is really trying to put this wonderful water recreation trail on the map, like how does restoration interface with recreation? Because there's a huge connection. I think you probably all know, but I'd like to drill down a little bit into that. So here we go. Maybe. There we go. So here's the problem. Some of you may know this, it's been referenced a few times. Every year the federal government invests hundreds of millions of dollars to protect and restore our nation's wonderful great waters, from the Great Lakes, which has been mentioned, to the Chesapeake Bay, the Florida Everglades, the Gulf Coast, and the Ohio River Basin is not receiving anything. I also want to say and underscore what has been said. Chris from the Ohio River Basin Alliance, I want to give a shout out to Chris in the Ohio River Basin Alliance. He's the vice chair. All what I'm about to talk about, and you'll see their logo in a second, all what I'm about to talk about is under the umbrella, the leadership, the passion of the Ohio River Basin Alliance, which is a multi-state, over 400, I think, organizations of various shapes and sizes that are contributing and putting their passion and energy behind the economic, environmental, recreational vitality of this region. So there's the problem. Like, we really want to change that. Why do these ecosystems get federal funding? Because it's been well acknowledged that a piecemeal approach, a stop and start approach, is not going to tackle the kind of like holistic, system-wide problems we have, like invasive species, like farm runoff, like toxic pollution. So we want to change that. So what's the need? This is a map of impaired streams. This region has over, someone mentioned Kentucky River. Shout out to the Kentucky River. The health of the Ohio River is really the health of tributaries and all the waters that feed it, the wetlands, the streams, the tributaries. This is a map that shows on a state-by-state basis all the streams in this region that are impaired in one way, shape, or form because of nutrients, because of heavy metals, because of E. coli, a whole host of problems. And we want to change that. We want to clean that up. We want to improve that, because if we do that, we will have increased public health. We'll have increased community health. We'll have increased recreation opportunities. So the urgency. This is from East Palestine. This made national news. It kind of put this region on the map. That was a train derailment that both leaked and then they burned a lot of nasty stuff in the environment. But I'm not going to read this through, but I want to emphasize the first bullet point. It's really inexcusable in 2023 in the United States, we have millions of people in this country that don't have plumbing, they don't have access to clean water, they don't have access to affordable water. And if you look at Appalachia and the Ohio River Basin where we are, that problem is especially acute. So in addition to all the sort of historic problems, there's a real health problem, a real community problem, and I would say a real compassion problem that we still have that. And we want to change that. So there is some urgency to this issue. So here's the opportunity. The Ohio River Basin Alliance, through their hard work, their history, and they've been at it since like 2009, they wrote a plan that was released with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Public Assistance to States, about 2.5, 3 years ago. Was released that looked at 6 goals, like world-class recreation, maritime transportation, knowledge and research, but also one of the goals was abundant clean water and healthy and productive ecosystem. And under those 2 goals was an objective: craft a restoration plan to really get at some of the problems that we just sort of talked about very briefly, so we can improve the health of our communities. So, but there's something, and so we have the opportunity to do that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But we have even a better opportunity, a bigger opportunity, dare I say a more vision opportunity. And that is, unlike all the ecosystems you saw on that original map from the Great Lakes, the Chesapeake, we have a chance to do something different. We have an opportunity to tie ecological benefits to societal benefits. How do we ensure that as we're restoring fish and wildlife, as we're restoring mussel habitat, as we're restoring wetlands, we're also making water affordable. We're also getting water to communities that can't access it. We're also talking to the tribal nations who this is their homeland. How recreational benefits and public access. So we want to see ecosystem benefits go hand in hand with community benefits and community health, and we have an opportunity to do that. And I really think this is where the cutting edge of restoration and environmentalism and sustainability is. The real quick 30-second history of sort of environmentalism and conservation in this country, the 18 and 1900s, we had the national park movement, where we bought and sort of walled off huge tracts of lands. The national park system is a gem. The history of that, of course, is a lot of those were tribal lands that tribes were forced to be removed. However, fast forward to the 20s and 30s, you have the Dust Bowl and all the Leopold, and you had what I think a speaker mentioned was, well, how do we pay for professional wildlife management so we don't have birds going extinct, so we don't have white-tailed deer that you can't hunt? People now don't realize that there was a time where it was really hard to get white-tailed deer. Why? Because there was overhunted. So that second chapter was okay, we're going to pay fees, basically hunters and anglers are paying an excise tax to make sure we're funding state DNRs so we can manage fish and wildlife populations. Then Rachel Carson, and Silent Spring and DDT and bald eagles almost going extinct, and this sort of acknowledgement that a lot of the pollutants we're putting in the environment, we need to curtail and monitor. That led to the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. It led to a multi-billion-dollar investment by the federal government to upgrade our wastewater infrastructure so we have sewage being dumped in the water. I grew up in Cleveland. Someone mentioned the Cuyahoga River. That's my home river. Yes, it did catch on fire, but now you can kayak on it. You can picnic around it. And so that led to the fourth chapter is large landscape scale conservation efforts. We did need this collaboration. To solve these problems at a holistic scale, we need to look at not just one little problem or one little wetland or one stream, but how does this system work? How does the Ohio River, 981-mile river, and all the 204,000 miles of land and streams that flows are in that, well, how do you do that? And that led to the map you saw. We're going to have federal investment to get at these problems at a large scale to produce results. And I would say the next chapter is kind of like a chapter 4A or 4B, is how do we tie restoration to community health, to people health, to public access and other societal benefits. And what we've talked about also is an economic piece. So what's the game here? I think we heard this came up in the last question, where's the money? How does this work? So the first part is we want to engage people, engage communities, engage stakeholders, much like what Ohio River Way is doing, much like what Orbit is doing. We want to engage people. We want to create a restoration plan, which I'm about to talk about. We want to turn that plan over to Congress, and we need Congress mobilized. The Ohio River Congressional Caucus is a huge region. It has, I think, 62 House members and 28 members of the Senate. Those folks need to champion this just like it's being championed in the room. And the final part of that is once you've done all those pieces, then you will be ready to secure that federal investment. Then you'll be ready to get that year after year appropriation like other ecosystems are getting, and the Ohio River needs to get as well. And this picture, It's from winter in DC, and that's the Great Lakes Coalition with Marcy Kapter, a senior appropriator. But we need to be doing that in DC too, with members of Congress from here. So how are we getting there? Let's do a time check here. We are going to get there through a three-pronged approach. When I talk about a three-pronged approach, I'm talking specifically about the restoration plan. Think of a stool, the proverbial three-legged stool. Like one of the stool is the technical piece, the science piece. We need to make sure that what we are asking for is rooted and grounded in science. It has to be ironclad, it has to be cited, it has to be like airtight. Like what's the science say needs to be done? The second leg of that stool is community input. What do local communities think? What do local people in Madison think, in Nashville, and Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati? What are the local conservation parties? Because one principle of our democracy is that people impacted by a problem should have a say in its solution. And we want to make sure people are at the table when this is being crafted. So this is not just a regional plan writ large, but it's also a ground-up plan. And the third leg of the stool is what do tribes think? This region has two federally recognized tribes that still have land in the region. One is the Seneca Nation of Indians in New York, and the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina. So, and I'll talk about that in a second, but what do those important sovereign nations, government to government, they are analogous to the US government, what do tribal nations who still live here, what do they think? So here we go, I'll give you an update. Where we are now is the technical work group has 9 committees. You can read what they are. They get at nuts and bolts issues from inadequate water infrastructure to runoff pollution, impacts of climate change, which in this region, the Ohio River Valley, valleys don't do well with flooding. We're talking about increased rain, increased flooding, and what do we do about that? And I like to point just one explanation, like environmental injustice. A lot of people ask, well, what does that mean? We've heard about like inclusivity and how do we make recreation accessible. But what does environmental injustice mean in the context of what we're talking about? And it's simple. What are the communities that have been most impacted by environmental harm or environmental degradation? We still have communities that live near a Superfund site that for decades has not been remediated and are still on bottled water. We still have communities, we're talking about a lot of mining legacies that still have, their impaired waters in their community is orange because of acid mine drainage. We still have communities that are more susceptible to flooding. So we talk about environmental injustices. Where are those impacts being felt, and how do we help those communities that are being impacted by those things? So community input, second leg of the stool. We've held from last summer to May of this year 31 listening sessions around the region. We were not in Madison. This region is huge. We went from Pittsburgh all the way to Nashville to large communities and small communities. Had a lot of sponsors. And I just want to say 3 quick takeaways. One takeaway from those listening sessions is that people want protection as much as they want restoration. What do I mean by that? When we talk about environmental restoration, we are looking to fix or clean up or remediate things that we've messed up in the past, like a Superfund site, like a toxic site, like destroyed habitat that's now causing erosion. Protection is like, well, how do we protect either what's still in good, that still does have good ecological function, or in this case, this is sort of ground zero for toxic PFAS. In Marietta, Ohio, almost everyone, they just talked about PFAS the whole meeting. That's a cancer-causing, really serious chemical that, as folks know by the movie Dark Water, it's now pretty much everywhere. So protect what's still in good shape, but also prevent new pollution from getting in the water. And the third thing is flooding. Flooding is acute. Every community once you could name a year in a flood and what damage it caused, and unfortunately, as someone I think mentioned on the earlier panel, that can mean loss of life as well. So, tribal engagement, I'll just say the picture on the left is from a 3-day sort of meeting with the Seneca Nation of Indians in New York. That's on the Allegheny River, which is, of course, helps form the Ohio, and in fact, the Ohio is from a Seneca word that they've named actually the Allegheny. So in some ways, this whole thing is the Ohio. But I want to spend a little time with that photo on the right. That's in Oklahoma. That's the eastern band of Shawnee, the eastern Shawnee of Oklahoma, excuse me. You know, there are dozens of tribes who have ancestral lands in this geography that were forcibly removed in the 1800s with the Indian Removal Act. Tough part of our history. However, they are still connected to this region culturally, and in some cases they still have some land holding. I wanted to just share one story. When we were meeting with the chief of the Eastern Shawnee, Chief Glenna Wallace, you know, we were there in late June, that's when this picture was taken, and she said, I want to show you something. And a few weeks after our visit, they were opening a splash park for children in their community. And by splash park, you know, there's like fountains and slides and this huge, big, round splash park. And she said, I want you to look at something. And there through the middle of the splash park was a wavy blue line. And she said, do you know what that is? I said, no, I don't. She said, that's the Ohio River. That's our home. Oklahoma is far removed from the Ohio River, but their ties are still, and this is almost 200 years later, their still ties are really strong. And so when we talk about tribal interest in this region, it's very deep, and there's a lot of bad history in between the 1800s and now. And so what we're trying to do, just to put like a finer point on this, in addition to some of the needs and desires of tribes like the Seneca Nation, who there for land, if you don't know, is about 42 miles on each side of the Allegheny. You know, they have a large stretch of the river. They are interested in like curtailing invasive plants, preserving habitat, Eastern Hellbender. They have a Hellbender restoration program. They're sort of nuts and bolts things. But what are they also concerned with? They're also concerned that according to the Endangered Species Act, all tribes have to acknowledge and help bring back from the brink, as Vic talked about, we want to bring back imperiled species. The Endangered Species Act is a safety net for imperiled species, and they abide by those findings. However, tribal nations have their own like ceremonial or medicinal plants that they consider sacred and important, but there's no reciprocity. So they can say, we are helping you bring back your species, we would like your help in bringing back our species, and by law there's no reciprocity there. That's a problem. And similarly, I would say for tribes that no longer have land here, what are some of the issues that comes up there? Well, every year the Eastern Shawnee brings back busloads of children to this region to learn about their culture and their history. How do you keep that going? The flooding that impacts communities along the river also impacts ceremonial sites, or in some cases, burial sites. You know, the flooding that's washing away infrastructure here and important sites here are washing away ancestral burial grounds there. And if folks may or may not know, just recently, great news, I think it's in the Ohio River Way booklet, the United Nations just named the mounds, the Hopewell Mounds and other mounds in Ohio as a UNESCO United Nations Natural Heritage Site. We have a lot of great history and heritage and cultural history here. How do we preserve and protect that? So, we need to wrap this up. So putting it all together, these are kinds of things you're going to see in the plan, which is still being crafted. I want to just highlight number 11, a restoration economy. That was a huge aspect of our listening sessions. It's been a huge aspect of what we talked about today. And we're going to pump in millions of dollars and eventually billions of dollars for a region. What do local communities want? They want to make sure that local workers, local contractors, local businesses can benefit from that. They don't have contractors coming in from 7 states away to do the work and leave. They really see this as a long-term economic development tool. We know that with the baby boom generation retiring en masse, even things like water utilities are having a tough time now hiring people and retaining people. But we know in 10 years, between 1/3 and 2/3 of water utilities workers are retiring out. How do we train that next generation of workers for technical jobs, for excavation jobs, for research jobs, to make this all come together? So the basics, if you want to boil it down to 3 bullet points, here's what the restoration plan looks at. How do we restore ecosystems? How do we improve the health of communities and people? And how do we strengthen regional economy / local economy? Lastly, here's a quick timeline. We're getting ready, we're putting this all together. There's a lot of pieces, as you can see. We hope to release a draft late 2023. I would honestly say it's probably going to be early 2024. And that's where we can all use your help in like weighing in on that. It'll go out for public comment. Hopefully we get a lot right. And if we miss some things, we want to know about it. Lastly, the recreation piece and how this ties in. This is my really not too beautiful, but very simplistic overview. Right at the basis and the foundation of this, you have what does the Ohio River Restoration Plan look like? we get federal investment to start taking action on this on a grand scale, we'll start seeing improved ecosystem health. That leads to, of course, more outdoor recreational opportunities. And again, that last part is once communities like Madison take advantage of this and other communities which already are taking advantage of this, you'll see a really profound change in the economic development piece. We already see that in other ecosystems. I'm sure we'll see it here. And I'll leave you with this. You know, what we're talking about is making the impossible possible. This is a mountaintop removal site in Kentucky. If folks know anything about mountaintop removal, what it leaves is almost like a concrete moonscape. It's almost impossible for anything to grow there. The only things that do grow well there, unfortunately, are invasive weeds and species that we don't want. Well, University of Kentucky looked at it, they did some research. It turns out by scouring the environment and by planting native species and seeing which native species grow best, and by the way, hold on, that's also what you see in the bottom of that valley is a stream, or I should say it used to be a stream. It's now covered with 150 foot of rock waste from the top of the mountain. Well, we can make the impossible possible. This is about 10 years later. Those are all native trees. There is maybe not a stream, but there's running water that flows down the valley that supports amphibians, native species, birds, and we can do it. Like, there are a lot of problems in this region that you think are intractable, but they're actually not. And with the investment and focus and collaboration, we can get at it. So, thank you very much. I think we're going to have Ted come up, but we can take questions when this is done. I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Was promoted to Deputy Associate Director for the U.S. National Park Service. So, in addition to this being the Ohio Riverway Summit and Brewster Rhodes' birthday, it's also a celebration for Stephan and his promotion as well. So, we are thrilled for Stephan. Before yesterday, Stephan was the National Program Manager for the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, based in Washington, D.C. Stephan is a graduate of Oregon State University in the College of Forestry, and after the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, he was hired as a planner, working to establish the national monument at that site. Today, or perhaps yesterday or the day before, Stephan was managing a team of 80 employees across the country who work with communities in developing their conservation and outdoor recreation visions. Importantly for the Ohio Riverway, this program was instrumental in facilitating the Rivertown Review Initiative that included in-depth engagement with 14 communities along the Ohio River in 2020 and 2021. The Ohio Riverway's ongoing partnership with Stephan's team is allowing us to expand the Rivertown Review Program as we move forward and to pursue designation as a national water trail in the coming year. And we truly hope that this is just the beginning of an ongoing partnership with the National Park Service. So we are thrilled that Stephan has taken the time to join us this week, so please give him a warm welcome.
I thought I'd better start with some random thoughts, because I've been learning a lot this morning and talking to a lot of people. Let me start off with my conversation last night with Stacy. Stacy, I hope you allow me to talk about NAS. It became apparent in that conversation how much business needs outdoor recreation and the outdoor recreation economy. Because in order to improve the quality of life within the Ohio River Basin and to get NAS with great employees, they need a place they want to live in and they want to be at. And so outdoor recreation is synonymous with doing businesses, and outdoor recreation creates business opportunities. So I just wanted to echo that comment from you, Stacy, last night, and thank you for that. So then, Russ Clark over here kept talking about youth when he was on the panel today. And so I just want to emphasize the importance and how we have to work harder to engage youth in outdoor recreation. And we can't just do it one time getting them on a canoe. We got to continue to get youth engaged in outdoor recreation so they build the skills. lifetime skills so they become lifetime recreationists across the country. So that was what I learned from Russ. And then there was one more note here. Nope, I guess those were the two ones. One other thought. Gosh, in 2017, the National Park Service with other federal agencies like the Bureau of Land Management, the Corps of Engineers, Forest Service, advocated to develop in the Bureau of Economic Analysis in Washington a measure to measure the outdoor recreation economy. And we, all those agencies, pitched money in to build that model. That today, every year, they test and monitor how much money outdoor recreation contributes to the U.S. economy. So in 2021, $421 billion of outdoor recreation opportunities and sales related to that contributed to the gross national product. Incredible. And what makes this even more incredible that every member in Congress now knows the value in their state of what outdoor recreation contributes to. And as a result, we've been able to pass some major legislation over the last few years to help fund and support those ideas. So that was a exciting new change that we just keep learning about. But before I get into my presentation and with some notes, Mark, thank you for the introduction and welcome to here. We so need your guidance. It reminds me about entropy. So I know the professors like Mr. Wick will know what I'm talking about. But the first and second laws of thermodynamics, energy is never created or lost, it just exists, it just changes form. And if you can find someone with talent like Mark who can take this dispersed energy around there and then form it into something, man, you got a gold. And so, we have a lot of energy folks out of David Wicks and Brewster with great ideas. But boy, if you can't capture that and formulate that and make things happen, then it's a challenge. And that's what I think bringing Forrest and Mark into this is really important. I do appreciate Brewster, his vision, his energy, Dan Wicks, his knowledge, his guidance that he provides to us, and his enthusiasm. I've been having the opportunity to work with Frances Minot. Man, her executive abilities, her business skills and accoutrements are incredible. Forrest, like someone already said, great communicator and great at making things happen. So those are folks I really wanted to recognize before I got going. But I also have some other folks, and this is some of our team from the National Park Service. Because they've been working on the Ohio Riverway projects. Jerry Schultz couldn't make it today. And I don't know if you've met Jerry, but he is the brains of this river. He understands so much of this river and is a great guide. We've employed him through the National Park Service to help us with the work on doing the Ohio River Basin. John Olivier, John, can you just stand up real quick? John's a planner with working for the National Park Service right now. We brought him on to help with the Ohio Riverway. But not only that, he's helping us with natural disasters around the country. He doesn't create the disasters, but he helps us address them. Andrea Ireland. Hi, Andrea. Now, I don't know who said this to me, but they said, oh, she's the queen of water trails. Really? Where'd that title come from? So, there you are, Miss Queen. So that makes her the queen of water trails. Russ Clark, if you would get up, does that make him the prince of water trails? I don't know.
King of everything.
But they have been the movers and shakers to get the National Park Service engaged in this large landscape. And so we're pretty excited. And then I just got a couple more people. Moses Chung, if you'd stand up, he's the senior project manager helping us with our current work here in the Ohio Riverway. And I don't know if I lost Will Bell. He's back here in the corner. He's the one who produced these beautiful products that we're able to do and really gives the Park Service a real professional look. And so we're very appreciative. He's hanging out with us today for the sole reason to learn from you so he can do even more cool stuff on products we're going to have coming down the pipeline with that. So that's here. Okay, so now I get to figure out how to move this slide. Move this slide. Okay, we'll go move it this way. Oh! Wait, back. Okay, you're all going to be involved now. First off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the National Park Service. This large landscape collaboration is the next thing. I got a model from the Eastern Sierra Nevada that we tried to build. Turns out you guys are doing a large landscape collaboration, but I just wanted to share some other ideas from around the country just to see if you can steal any of those. I want to talk a little bit about economic development and then the National Water Trail. But first, it's in our DNA from the National Park Service that we can't really talk to you without bringing pictures of national parks. So I brought you some pictures, and I'm going to let you guess. You just shout out which park it is. Now let's see if I got the right thing. No? There we go. I know you can do it. Okay. Yosemite. Easy. Hold it. You can't say that. Quiet. This Yosemite National Park, very beautiful. Okay, this one.
Can I do this?
No, you can't say this one.
Cuyahoga River.
Cuyahoga River. Who said that? Oh, well done. Yeah, beautiful river. But I will say Andrea helped them evolve a water trail on the Cuyahoga River, and it's really increased use and opportunities and appreciation. Okay, here's a tough one.
Ohio.
The beautiful Ohio River. Okay, Alaska. Who said the Katmai? Excellent. This is Brooks Falls at Katmai. And what happens during the summer? It's filled with bears. What are they doing? Eating. And they just jump in their mouths. Now, I wanted to show this because every October is Fat Bear Week. And you can get on the website and you can vote for the candidates for the fattest bear. Because, you know, they come out in the spring skinny as all crap and just explode. This year, Grazer, a female, won the contest. Yellowstone, yes. And the thing is, the landscape's so big. If you put one of these guys, bisons here, it would take up a couple of these tables. That's how gigantic they are. So I don't understand why tourists want to go pet them. Who else do we have here? Grand Canyon, yep. And then Arches. So we really have 241 different park units in the National Park Service. And we just added a new unit, one in Chicago and its counterpart in Mississippi. Can anyone tell me what that is? Just got added this year. Emmett Till, and telling the Emmett Till story. But that makes me cry, so I'm not going to talk anymore about that. Okay, so I want to talk about branding real quick. And I'm very fortunate to work for an agency that has this incredible brand. We're known around the world for our brand.
That's Moses.
That's Moses. Yes, that's Moses. But he's branding something, and we're going to not talk about that yet. But I want to talk about the arrowhead and its recognition. And it allows me to stand up here and talk to you, because if I didn't have the arrowhead, Brewster would say, who's this guy? So branding is really important, and branding is something we have to think really hard about for the Ohio River Way. And you have to grow that brand over time. Now there's one other brand that's up here. Can someone tell me what it is? Of the National Park Service? The hat, the flat hat. And that's why this picture of Moses is here. Okay, when I was 4 years old, I watched Yogi Bear and Boo Boo and Mr. Ranger. And the flat hat was my first branding and identity of branding for the National Park Service. But it was Jellystone Park at that time. So that's how vital branding is. And that's how we need to work on the Ohio River Way to keep evolving a brand. So since 1988, the National Park Service has worked with communities throughout the Ohio River Basin in over 300 over 300. There we go. Over 300 projects in communities. And water trails, we helped with conservation, we helped with developing trails. We even helped develop a nonprofit called Groundwork, which has a different name, in Cincinnati, right?
Oh, Groundwork, Ohio River Valley.
Groundwork, Ohio River Valley. And that's really kind of a cool system, Groundwork. Is this really working? Anyway. I'll talk until I get another microphone. Groundwork was a concept that, at the time, was Prince Charles in the UK, who's now the king. And he had this idea of taking underserved communities. Taking underserved communities and restoring those communities. And so some of my colleagues before me went to England, learned this process, brought it back to the United States, and we've developed 22 groundwork trusts, nonprofits across the country, using EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, brownfield funds to create these nonprofits. And they are now restoring degraded lands, brownfields, and other parts of communities around the country into community assets as parks and other kinds of stuff. So I just wanted to highlight that work as well as working on all these conservation projects. But then we got thinking, it's a hell of a lot of work and no one knows what we do. So why don't we get a bigger bang for our buck and start working on larger landscape projects? And that's what brought us to the Ohio River Way. It's a large landscape that we think will have a huge influence on the residents in these states and in the Ohio River Basin. And so that's how the Park Service is getting involved with this. But why? You manage 425 units. What the heck are you doing here? And back in 1963, Congress said, Park Service, can you help communities around the country achieve their conservation and outdoor recreation goals? Actually, they didn't say, can you? They said, you will do this. And so we developed the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance. And at that time, no name was too big. But we're looking for a shorter name now. Because most people cannot remember who you are. Rivers, Trails, what's this thing? Assistance? Anyway, that's who we are. And we have legislation that allows us to work outside of parks to provide free services to communities who don't have the capacity or just need some of our skills to complement their knowledge experts. And that's how we work around the country, and we've worked on thousands upon thousands of projects. So moving on. Oh, but just before I get into the next thing here, you're really finding me technically inept. But before we get into this, I do want to say the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance today is getting into large landscape work. We're also getting into natural disasters. And just within the last 5 years, we've helped 90 communities recover from hurricanes, fires, floods, tornadoes. And it's really starting to become like 40% of our work. And so, and it's not going to die down. The disasters are coming fast, they're coming quick. And nothing's more gratifying than helping communities that just kind of have a whole new life, a whole new vision for their communities. And so that's kind of where we are today as well. So back to large landscape. This is the Eastern Sierra Sustainable Recreation Partnerships. And Eastern Sierra, just think of these beautiful snow-capped Sierra Mountains, but on the east side, where most people don't go. And it consists of 3 counties, 3 national forests, 6 national parks, a dozen communities, and then Mammoth Lakes, California. And most people know Mammoth Lakes, California because it's huge, it's skiing, it has year-round recreation opportunities. So then if you're a skier, you kind of get a ski pass, and the ski passes become national ski passes. And in order for Mammoth Lake to get this national ski pass, they have to have an airport. And so the local tiny little airport in Bishop, California is now taking in United jets, really big jets with a lot of people year-round. And what that's doing is pumping so many visitors into the eastern Sierra Nevada that they became overwhelmed. And they said, what the heck? And so they said, we're going to collaborate, we're going to get together, we're going to figure out how we're going to manage this influx of visitors and improve our communities at the same time. So before they started this collaborative, no one talked to each other. Agencies worked in their silos. Communities had no money. They didn't have capacity to address the issues that were coming. The infrastructure for both travel, roadways, and internet were poor. It just was a rural environment, as many of us are familiar with. Once they organized and came together, they had a nonprofit to help facilitate this process. They just began accomplishing things in 5 years that just blew their socks off. And the biggest thing they accomplished is having a voice in the state of California. And so now they're organized, they're able to get money from the state bond bill to help with construction. They're able to go to the legislature asking for support in evolving outdoor recreation economy. So it's this collaboration of these communities and these public land managers that's increasing their ability to leverage financial resources, their ability to achieve community vision across this larger landscape. Now, I spent time on Cape Cod. And on Cape Cod, every town will not work with the other town next to it. No. Oh, yeah, you have to get your own water supply. Oh, you have to go get your own dump supply. Oh, you have to do this. When you collaborate on the regional, you can really share those resources, share those costs, and be more efficient. Then they began to think about how do we create new visitor experiences, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then they all together figured out what the recreation economy could look like based upon the resources and the opportunities that existed. And then they started marketing themselves to that. And then finally, they got money to strengthen the assets and infrastructure. And they got a long way to go, but they're moving, and they're just so excited. So to me, these are the same things you're already doing on the Ohio River Way. But I wanted you to see some of these in case they spark an idea that there's some new approaches or something you can move forward with. Okay, kind of transferring into economic development. The Ohio Riverway corridor for recreational opportunity, who's going to benefit? And the very first group that has to benefit are your residents. They need access to good outdoor recreation. They need access to be healthy. They need access to get out and moving. These things we do, we have to do for them. Oftentimes we lose sight of the residents and we think about the visitors we want to bring. But it's the residents. It's getting the kids in our communities trained to go fish, trained to go get on kayaks or go on canoes. It's focus on our community to make sure our residents have an improved quality of life. And that's, to me, probably one of the most important things. But in order to do that, we need to work with other communities next to us on the Ohio River Way. So all those 12 communities that we have been working with throughout, they have opportunities to get out of their shell and start working with their neighbors to not only create opportunities for local residents and to share resources and to collaborate, but also to build the recreation economy for residents throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio to come visit. And then once you figure that out, you guys have 3 airports. I thought it was only 2. But you got Cincinnati, you got Louisville, and you got Indianapolis that can feed national and international visitors into your area. And what I've learned working on projects in Florida, like Orlando, which you have the real thing here. You don't have to make it up like Orlando does. And international visitors don't come for a week or 2. They usually come for a month. And that when they get to Orlando, that's it. They don't know where to go next. And so how do we begin to tap into that resources they're not just going to come to Madison. But if Beebe, right? Did I say that right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Beebe and the other two communities next to them collaborate and market what they have for recreation opportunities that could last for a week, and someone else in the Ohio River corridor does that, and then you all start collaborating on how you're going to market and get this message out to those visitors. That's kind of the next step now, where we've invested in figuring out what each of the communities' assets are, what their opportunities are. You're finding funding to enhance and strengthen those. But now how do we start moving to the next level to build our economy? And so it's just this progression. You take one at a time, but you're going to get there. Here's a couple examples. In Oregon in the 1980s, there were 3 cheese manufacturers. And then there were a bunch of vineyards that all started. But they didn't have very much clout together. So this guy takes a piece of paper and he draws up the Oregon Wine and Cheese Tour and gets it marketing. And pretty soon you have people driving this road route going to the vineyards and to the cheese factories, and they created a new system, a new economy out of that, which now has grown into something bigger. And I think you could probably say the same thing about the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. You know, I was in Louisville, so I saw the urban Bourbon Trail, even though half of them were closed on Tuesday nights. So don't go to Louisville on Tuesday nights. The other thing is there's 62 national heritage areas across the United States. And the Ohio River Way concept is actually a national heritage area concept. And Congress funds these organizations to help get them up and going. But I just, here's some in your neck of the woods, Steel Industry America Heritage Area, National Coal up in the Appalachian Mountains, silos and smokestacks. All these have collaborated together on a larger landscape with the resources they have to become an attraction to tourism. And it's just, you guys are doing it. Just trying to show you different things so maybe a spark comes out of this meeting today. So potential itineraries. And I think you're working on an exercise this afternoon on that. So I'm just going to throw a few ideas out on some potential itineraries. One is families. So where are there opportunities with connected communities in the Ohio River Basin that a family can come and spend a few hours on the water, spend some time biking, spend some time going through the community, spend some time eating and overnighting? What would a trip look like for a family like that? What would a trip look like for senior citizens who want to get out there as a group? There's some organizations that take senior citizens and teaches them. Rope Scholar is one of them. What opportunities could we design? What itinerary could we design for them that then becomes an attraction and they come continuously? And so you can't think of one route, but you have to think of different itineraries for different groups of people so that you increase it. It's always strange to me why a bar has only one theme. When if it was big enough, it could have Western dancing here and it could have something over here. So you could always have a diversity of customers coming in. So why can't we do that with outdoor recreation? Let's not get into the silo of only one type of recreation. But what's the diversity? How do we design those itineraries for them? And then how do we shove it down their throat that they come and see this and get excited about it? So today, I think we're going to do some activities on that, but just be thinking about the diversity of opportunities. I was going to share with you successes that I have learned from Brewster and other folks, Russ Clark and stuff, but Dr. Wicks did that this morning, so I'm not going to go through that. But for each of these communities, like Portsmouth, that's this one, these are pictures of it. I'm just going to go through so you just see the diversity of what attractions each community has. But boy, here's some nexus of creating opportunities. And I want you to think about the river this way. Oh yeah, that's what I meant to say. The river can provide all the way down here, okay? I'm trying to think how to say this. Okay, imagine this. You have different settings. So let's say you like to be in an urban area, and you like to recreate within an urban area. then let's design water opportunities on here that fit that. Cincinnati, Louisville, maybe a couple of these. Now let's say that you want to have a wilderness experience. Okay, well there's going to be large stretches of this river that are allowing you to test your skills, allowing you to get away from people, allowing you. So there's another potential opportunity for the water trail. They may not go up here, but they may find what they're looking for here. So think of the river like a land where there's different settings and different opportunities. And again, consider that in your itinerary. Because even though we're going to try to do a water trail for the whole thing, it doesn't matter that you do the whole thing. You know, if you got a family of 4 kids that are young, you're only going to do a mile or 2 or something small. Or you could be right out here on the river and paddling around and enjoying that. So it's just getting on the river, getting the skills. So think about that as you develop these outdoor recreation economy. And I'm just making sure I said everything I wanted to say. Wow. I don't have to read any of this. I guess I can close pretty soon and go grab some lunch. And then, oh, okay, that's what I'm missing. Okay, so I'm going to take you through these real quick. Here we are at Portsmouth, some lovely pictures. Maysville, Augusta, cool. Who's the guy from Augusta I was talking to? Yeah, love it. So anyway, I got to get to these towns. New Richmond. Oh, New Richmond. Let's look at their pictures. I didn't mean to go so fast. The historic Underground Railroad sites. Another itinerary where you could connect both Kentucky and Indiana with that concept and tell that story. And they could drive to it, or they could kayak to it. They could do a variety of different things. But the stories are incredible. And the sites exist here. The real thing, not Orlando. Lawrenceburg. Wow, beautiful purple. Aurora.
Yeah. Best bike shop between Cincinnati and Louisville.
Really, but how do you bike when they're hanging from something?
Air bikes.
Rising Sun, how gorgeous is that? D.B., who I would have said D-Bay, but no. Carrollton. Beautiful Madison. You all beautiful, but this is, actually this doesn't do justice. Then Jefferson, Clarksville, New Albany, just getting through this really quickly, and West Point. Richard, right? Mayor, yeah. So, very cool. Okay, so during the Obama administration, we were doing this thing called America's Great Outdoors. We're trying to get Americans out, and we're trying to do all these things. And the Secretary of Interior says, let's get people on the water. So he says, okay, prepare me a secretarial order. And so we looked at the National Trails Systems Act, and we figured out that we can do designation. The Secretary could designate national water trails. And so this is his reason. Water trails are recreational routes with a network of public access points connecting people, places, communities to the waterways that provide high-quality outdoor recreation opportunities. So that was why he established it. And so we don't have one yet. I just want you to see what it could be. You know? I don't know if we're going to call it Ohio Riverway National Water Trail, but it looks really great in my mind. And so we're working on that. So what the hell? Can you just designate it? Well, no. You just can't designate it. You got to create this National Water Trail. Well, what does it take, Stephan? Well, it takes... Any last pictures before I move on?
Very nice. Looks kind of small though.
This is a side stream heading into the Ohio River. Okay, first thing is recreation opportunities, and you all have been working on that part of it. So the water trail will provide you. And just think about it. You can float down, then go into a community, explore that community, get back in your boat, and go float down some more. There could be a variety of different ways you travel across the water, but it's creating places for people to get on and off the river so they have this huge corridor about their recreation. Education, learning about the natural resources. Conservation, looking for opportunities, as our friend from U.S. Fish and Wildlife has been leading us on, of how to preserve different parts of the river system so people can explore and learn what the local health of the waterways and surrounding land. Community support. We can't do any of this unless the community buys into it. I think a lot of the work that Russ and Andrea had to do during the pandemic through these friggin' computers, what do we call it, teams, I don't know, worked with communities to get this stuff going. And that was a Herculean effort to get that. But community support is very important. Public information is probably the most important. Your digital guide is a huge, gigantic steps to the public information, but the users have to be able to have reliable information going down the river, know what the hazards are, know how to avoid the hazard, know what their inputs and outputs are so they can plan their trips, know what the recreation opportunities are. That's the part we're working on. And then trail maintenance. How are you going to maintain the signs? How are you going to maintain the access points? In the state of Minnesota, they do a really cool thing. The state pays the capital cost to create a access point. And the communities sign an agreement that they'll maintain it. And then every 10 years or so, the state comes in and rehabs those areas. Perhaps we can explore something like this with the Ohio River Basin group. So that's what trail maintenance is, and then the planning to it. And that's really, I had a few parting points. Let's see if they're really worthy of your messaging. All the Rivertown communities are well on the path of becoming a national treasure. Yeah, I agree. You know your community's assets and you are working to strengthen and improve those attractions. The next challenge is truly collaborate with each other in developing these visitor experiences and these itineraries. That's really going to be the hardest part of this journey for you. National Water Trail is just one tool, but you have to figure out your marketing and branding and design it so that it becomes regionally known, and then it will become nationally known over time, and figure out how to do that. The more the communities along the Ohio River learn from each other, the more effective you're going to be in growing this new economy. You just got to be working with each other because each community is so unique in their attributes and opportunities that working with each other, you can really make it happen. I've witnessed this in other parts of the country, that when communities work across boundaries, they achieve a whole lot more. It's not going to happen on Cape Cod. They're still stuck with town by town. So really, it is collaboration. And it's not an easy process, but when you work with each other, you end up with a good product that is sustainable, and that's what you want. And I really want to thank the opportunity to be here at the summit, and I appreciate all of the work that you guys are doing.
Director of the Center for Healthy Air, Water, and Soil at the Environment Institute and the University of Louisville, and he will share a little more about the Institute as well as the opportunities that presents for us. Ted.
Thanks, Mark. When Mark said, how'd you like to get in front of 150 hungry people? I said I'd leap at an opportunity like that. So no, I promise you this is just a few seconds here, mostly in the spirit of communication and sort of information sharing. So as Mark mentioned, this is a very unusual and an unusually good partnership. Like so many of the partnerships that are in this room, when we had the opportunity to sit down with the Alzagram, the Second Family Foundation, and OSHA, thank you for introducing us to all of this. It was just a remarkable gift, and I will say our work at the University of Louisville, we have a large research institute, it's 110 people, We are focused on the role the environment plays in either making us sick or perhaps more interestingly, making us healthy. That is our entire focus and mission, and we pretty much have ignored the Ohio River for the last 6 years since we were conceived. So this is just a tremendous opportunity to bring health into the conversation, and I really encourage you all on your way out to look at the tables and all that after lunch. Grab one of these buttons. They're at the registration table. They're free of charge, although we're considering charging for them in the future. So you might want to get one now. It's a nice illustration of thinking about health differently. I'm in a school of medicine. We're kind of a cathedral to disease. We have lots of people that can scare the hell out of you about a lot of things. That's not the branch that we're in. So, really our goal here is to work with you all to bring health into the conversation in maybe some unusual ways. I think a lot of people think if you want to work on health, you go to a medical doctor, you go to the hospital, or you go to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Ironically, health actually comes from everything else. So by the time you made it to the Department of Health and Human Services, you're probably already sick. And, we're on the wrong side of the curve, if you think about it. So we find a lot of the most interesting opportunities, and I hope you'll find them too, are in all the other places. And when we think about government, I'm in Kentucky, so I think about the Energy and Environment Cabinet, I think about the Transportation Cabinet, I think about the Economic Development Cabinet. Those are the cabinets that fund health. It's just nobody told them. And so when we think about the important role the Ohio River can play in all of our communities, it is a health resource for us. Not just our physical health, but all kinds of health, right? So couldn't be happier to be part of this. I just want you to know, if you know of somebody on the academic side who's interested, and we've got colleagues up the road at Thomas More who've been on the river working really hard for a long time, so we're just first to be second in that sense. But there are universities and colleges up and down this river basin, and we'd love to be helpful in making sure students, not only in college, but in high school and middle school and elementary school, get to know the river differently. And so that's very much our mission. So I think with that, I'll say thank you. You're welcome to visit us anytime you are in Louisville. We'll be happy to show you around, and we'd be delighted to learn from you. So enjoy your lunch, and thank you.